Yes, sir.
All righty, good evening. It is 6:34 on Thursday, this fine July 19th evening. Prior to coming out before you, we met in pre-session to review the cases. Our first order of business is to review the minutes of our June 21st meeting. Are there any comments by the Commission, or is there a motion by the Commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Commission approve the minutes as written of Thursday, June 21, 2018's P&Z meeting.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Robinson. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Robinson, Maurer, Haas, Portman, Blankenship in favor, Guerra abstained, none opposed, motion carries.
All righty, item 4 on the agenda tonight is a public hearing. This is to consider approval of PD-259R-SF7 and 9, Blackberry Farms, being a zoning change request from Plan Development number 259, Single Family 7 and 9, to Plan Development Revised 259, Single Family 7 and 9, to revise the detailed site plan and conditions to permit the development of 74 single-family lots and 9 common area lots on 54.8 acres of land located on the north side of Sandy Lake Road, approximately 750 feet northeast of Starleaf Road. At the request of Denton Creek Land Company Limited and Blackberry Farm Limited, being represented by Lynn Cadlick. Marcy.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is our first public hearing this evening. This is a property in question. It's about 54 acres. A real quick history. In 1999, there was a request on a portion of this property for a single-family 9 district that was denied at that point. Back in 2012, this property owner annexed approximately 26 acres from the city of Carrollton. And with that additional acres came in with a planned development district in 2013. At that point, there was a single-family development that was approved for 82 lots. There was subject to additional floodplain and drainage studies that need to be done. Later that year, the applicant had submitted a preliminary and final plats, and those were both approved. Again, they were subject to floodplain and drainage studies. In 2016, another submittal for both preliminary and final plats were approved. Again, outstanding conditions were floodplain issues. All those plats have expired. However, the PD is still valid. So just a real quick history, again, on the Planned Development District 259, the original concept was for the 82 lots and 7 common areas. The areas north of the creek were supposed to be more patio homes than traditional south. And there was a nice series of amenities from farm, park, bridge, nature trail, and a creek. One of the key entry features and key features of this development was at the entry right at Sandy Lake. There's just over an acre of land that there was going to be a farmhouse and basically gardens and limited parking to be used. That development or that proposal is part of the current development and needs to be attached to that. Another part of the existing development that's going to be brought forward is another little focal point in the middle of the development. It's about an acre of land, which is going to be basically a green, grassy area. So take a minute to compare the existing proposal versus the proposed. On the left side is the currently approved detailed plan. On the right side is what you're looking at this evening. The major differences is that due to the floodplain studies being done, the areas that are in common areas have been increased by basically 6 acres from 24 to approximately 30 acres. You can see that in green. Again, another significant difference is the phase 2, which is north of the creek. They reduced that by 7 lots to 20 lots, and the lots, again, are a lot larger than they were before because you're incorporating more green areas. There's kind of a long list of just technical minor issues that were revised with the existing PD. This the existing PD and the proposed PD, there was a requirement for 3-home separation between stucco homes. That's been deleted. There are some words about allowing for detached buildings in the front yard. I think we can work through some of the word. I think I understand the intent of that, but it really just needs to be reworded. The original PD had option for rolled curbs. They no longer want those. There was a hike and bike trail that was going to be internal to the site. You can kind of see it through here. That's no longer part of the request. And we'll talk about, again, too, the bridge over was supposed to be dual arch bridge, and now it's going to be a single arch. And elimination, at one point there was some discussion about a pedestrian connection between this subdivision and the subdivision to the west, but that's my understanding that agreement never occurred. So again, what's before you this evening is this detailed plan, and since we've seen it last, the CLOMAR has been approved by FEMA. Basically, the floodplain study has been approved. Part of that approval, the single-family lots are no longer extending into the floodplain like they were before. As we talked about a minute ago, there's increased acreage of open space area that is going to be maintained by the HOA. There is along this property line adjacent to Hollywood Boulevard, or Hollywood Road, there is a 10-foot wide private drainage, basically an X lot. That's going to accommodate overflow drainage if needed. However, the one outstanding issue that's hopefully close to resolution is about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers providing stream bank erosion protection. There's still some discussion with the city and the Corps on that one final issue, but zoning can move on since the plat will be held up until that's resolved. This case, we did send 41 notices to property owners within 200 feet, only received 2 responses. In writing, one was in favor and one was opposed. I received a couple phone calls. And then within 800 feet, we sent out 96 notices, but I received no written response from that. So that being said, staff is recommending approval of the PD 259 revised SF 7 and 9, subject to conditions as revised in attachment A, which is in your packet. I also have a slide of that. But basically, the 3 outstanding issues was just to ensure that the entry feature common area that I showed you, that is attached to this PD, and that the development of that lot and the entry features be constructed prior to the issuance of a building permit for the first home, other than a model home. And then I think we talked about a little bit about the hardscapes in the front yard, how we're just going to wordsmith that. And then prior to the filing of the plat for Phase 1, again, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers approved the stream bank erosion protection. And staff wants to relook at the erosion control setback exhibit. And finally, as always, there'll be additional comments at the time of detailed engineering review. If we need to refer to them, I do have, which are probably impossible to read, all the PD conditions. Those in red are different than what the applicant had submitted. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is in the audience.
Okay, very good. Marcy, before we get to the applicant's presentation, a couple of quick questions for you. So would it, I recognize that the Corps of Engineers, approval of the Corps of Engineers, does that make this a conditional approval, or are we just shooting for straight approval and then subject to council action, they're recognizing that?
This is basically it's a conditional approval subject to this being resolved. The zoning can go on, okay. But again, the same condition you're going to see on the preliminary plat and the final plat.
So I had a question with regards to the tree mitigation. The way in the staff report, and the way it read, that the original tree mitigation was $600,000.
Yes.
And the applicant proposed paying $600.
Council, as part of the original approval, gave them a $125,000 tree mitigation fee. I think that's in there. So that was approved. That's part of the original plan development district that will be carried forward with this.
Okay. Then there was deletion of the trail. That was just an internal amenity to the property. Okay. Any particular reason? We can ask the applicant. But
yes, the applicant.
Okay. And then I remember a biggie last go around was kids that are living in this neighborhood, finding a way to get them to the elementary school, and that was per the easement there. What is some of the thinking behind the removal of that access easement?
And again, I'll let the applicant address that. I think there were discussions with the neighbors, and my understanding is they didn't come up to a great place for pedestrian access.
Yeah, that was a
So
tough one.
unfortunately, they'd have to come back down to Sandy Lake and go up Kimball Court.
Okay. And in looking at the site plan, they are providing a sidewalk along their extent of the property, although the sidewalk would go nowhere because there's no other existing sidewalk to the west of Sandy Lake, from the property along Sandy Lake.
I think there is one in front of. No, there's not.
And there's that on the east side of Kimball.
Okay.
Let me call George up here.
Yeah, George. Let's get George down here.
So the staff is aware that there's no sidewalk there. We actually have plans. I would say they're about 90% plans to have that sidewalk built. We're kind of waiting on this development to get more under construction before we let that project and build the sidewalk that's necessary.
So I guess the follow-up question would be, that means the city's picking up the cost of that sidewalk? Why should
would
the
be
city
correct.
pick up the cost of that?
It's not on the developer's property.
But the idea is that we want accessibility from the proposed development to provide to other areas along a sidewalk system. So we're going to pick up the cost of that.
Right. A number of years ago, when I first started at the city, we built sidewalks on Denton Tap, filling in gaps where there was missing sidewalk.
And that was only because the nursery, it didn't, way back whenever the nursery came in. All right. Okay. Hey, hold on a second, George. Any other questions of George while he's down here so we don't make him work too hard? All right. Thank you. Questions of staff by the commission? All right. Is the applicant here to present the case? Yes, sir. Well, time out. I need the applicant. Who's presenting on behalf? I see Mr. Holmes there.
And then we're going to have a public hearing after that.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll get to the comments, yeah.
Terry Holmes, we offset 225 East Highway 121 here in Coppell. It's good to be here. Thank you for listening. And do you want me to answer some of the questions that were raised? Or, most of you have heard about this for a while, so I think having a long, dissertation about it isn't appropriate, really. I guess I'll tell you a few things that I've heard. On the detached building in front of the building line, what that is really for is just to have a hardscape in front of it. So, like, if people want a motor court in a swing-in garage, you cannot make a swing-in if your garage door, let's say your garage door is perpendicular to the front building line. You cannot swing in without doing a 3 or a 5-point turn. So we would push the home back 5 feet and have the fence on the building line. That would facilitate that swing-in garage. If someone wanted a gated motor court for whatever reason, under the current code, even if you push the home back behind the building line, you cannot have any hardscapes in front of the home, because the home creates the new building line. Does that make sense? That's the whole purpose of that. Yeah. And so that's the detached building and the hardscape, and I've talked to Marcy about getting our wording and some photographs and drawn an exhibit that details that. Number 2, on the hike and bike trail, there was no plans for the city to ever connect to that hike and bike trail, and it looked like there was originally, like a long time ago, there was a hike and bike proposed trail that would that would connect a bunch of the cities together. That apparently is not going to happen, or is not even planned to happen, and so therefore we backed off of that. At that time, I was hoping that it could be a part of it, because I thought it'd be neat, and we thought we could connect to it, but that's not. There's no way to really make that facilitate between the floodplain and flood lines. And that was going to connect Las Colinas to Carrollton to Louisville to Coppell, right up the Fork of the Trinity.
Campione Trail?
Yep. Yeah, well, that's how it starts down there. Yeah, but it was called something different up north. I haven't looked at it in many years, so I forget what it was called, but there was another name for it up here.
So you would have made that connection off of the southern sector of the property somehow across
Yeah.
via easements or something?
I mean, the whole gun club, it would have to go through the gun club
Oh,
and go
yeah.
north and connect up to, and someone had the thought, it seemed like a great thought, but facilitating and actually making it happen was another, was a bigger issue. And then it would get across and go over towards Indian Creek Golf Course. If I remember correctly, it went across there, and then it went north up into the Vista Ridge area, and I was hoping it would swing in, but there was no ambition from our city to actually see how that could ever work out.
Yeah.
So it seemed like it was just, there's no reason to create that hike, to pretend like we're going to have a hike and bike trail there, because it wasn't going to happen.
Right. Understood.
The access to Hollywood, we tried many times, and really no one wanted to accept that they were going to give up part of their land to allow for a sidewalk to connect. And we tried it in 2 different places of Hollywood, meaning coming down to the south cul-de-sac of Hollywood and going to where Hollywood makes a Z, and it would be, so there, none of those, so the south, I don't think I can point to that, but to the south Hollywood, that picture had it there, the very south cul-de-sac of Hollywood.
The 20-foot utility easement, that one?
No. On the previous slide, does this work? Yeah, right there. It was coming down between our lots 3 and 4, and somehow getting across the open channel, which, there's not a way for that really to happen, that flip. We were at one time going to enclose that. That could not happen. So there's no way to jump across that and to connect the southern cul-de-sac, and then there's no way the existing homeowners to the exact north of us was not willing to give up an easement or to give up land to connect from our cul-de-sac, our most north cul-de-sac lot, up into the corner of Hollywood. So, unless we were going to try and force people's hands, I don't know how that would happen. We liked the idea, and we would have certainly given up land, and we would have built the sidewalk and everything else, but
would you consider
people
chipping
didn't
in
want
on
the
the
additional.
cost?
I'm
Would
sorry?
you consider chipping in on the cost to get you over to Kimball Court? Thinking about safe routes to schools for kids.
I didn't understand that. I'm sorry.
The sidewalk along Sandy Lake, would you consider chipping in some costs for that?
Hey, I think
The big thing's about kids, right? We're going to have kids in this neighborhood and getting them to schools.
there'll be some kids. Yeah. But we were on the $125,000 tree mitigation, if we could combine those, we thought that was excessive, because all that land we brought into the city, and we all knew it was going to have to be raised up even to build on. And so we did not do a flood. We tied down all the trees to the north of the creek. We thought it was too challenging because there's too many thicket trees to do it to the east of our property. And so we asked them, okay, we weren't going to do that, and to tie it down. So that's where we asked for some relief on that, and we got some relief, but had to pay a lot more than what we ever dreamed we would be paying for trees. When we're saving every tree that's possible on the old Coppell side, we're saving almost all the trees. But on the new Coppell side, that area was all trees, and is obviously if we're going to put homes on it, we have to raise out of the floodplain by about 3.5 feet. So, they all have to go away. But we didn't. We're not arguing the 125 at this point. We've accepted it.
Right, because 600,000 was calculated on the number of trees taken times the cost per tree.
No, but I don't know who did that. That was never a real number.
Oh.
No, I don't know where that number came from, because we never calculated, because we didn't do a full tree survey.
Survey.
Yeah, and what we were going to do is ask for the clouding, because some cities allow you to work with canopies, because some of it is so thick, to go in there and survey and tie it on every tree it's very difficult. Plus, it's just too thick, and it's like, why would we do it? We have to go in there and grub it all in order to get a survey crew through there. And so some cities allow for the canopies to be calculated, but this city does not, and that's fine. So we thought we would just try to negotiate that one through, because we thought the other was just a waste of time and money, and you're killing a lot of sapling trees and stuff for no purpose.
Marcy, is there any history on that 600K?
Well, again, that was a negotiated amount by the city council in terms of tree mitigation. If you want that to be rediscussed or renegotiated, then you'll have to submit a new tree survey to city council and make your argument there.
Yeah,
this body cannot deal
Right.
with the tree mitigation. That's something that we carried forward. But if you're uncomfortable with that number, then you're more than welcome to
Right.
resurvey.
No, we accepted that number, but that may help.
Well, so I'm asking, where does 600K come from? Is there any history on where the actual calculation of that number came from?
My memory isn't that good in terms of what we did back in 2013. I assume that you submitted a tree survey at that. There was a detailed tree survey that was submitted back with that last PD. So I assume that John Elias from our Parks Department did calculate that number.
So it's a calculated number, and it was negotiated down to 125. So hence I'm bringing up the idea of chipping in on a sidewalk along Sandy Lake, because I'm thinking about the kids and access to the school, because if you can't get access in through the neighborhood, it sounds like you tried, but we'll hear the public comments here in a minute. But if that can't happen, 600 down to 125, I'm thinking maybe there might be a good faith effort to help on the sidewalks.
I mean, if you made me do it, I'd do it, but I wouldn't love to do it. But the cost of everything has gone up so much. Our goal is to try to keep these lots affordable, and I mean it's ridiculous what's happening, in the market and with concrete and steel and other things, and it's hard to keep the lots affordable,
So, Marcy, am I out of line asking for that consideration?
It is off-site, Chairman, so it's something that you could suggest as a recommendation and see if City Council makes it as part of their final ordinance.
Okay. So you answered the questions. So did you have other presentation material you wanted to add on the proposed site?
No, I was more for questions, because I think we don't really have another full, formal presentation on it.
Okay.
Nothing's changing. The reason that we're here is because of the 2015 flood event that happened. That got everyone concerned. So we backed off it, and then COGS, the group of counties did a flood study, and then our city wanted us to take that modeling and incorporate that into our flood study. We did, and that took out a little over 3 foot-acres of valley storage. What that required us to do is to say, okay, now we've got to find 3 foot-acres of valley storage, and where do we find that? So what we wound up doing was the best solution, we think, by far, is to reduce the number of lots to the north, and there was one to the south, south and east. It's lot 16 on the old one. To take those lots out to that, and then we got our 3 foot of valley storage, 3 foot-acres of valley storage, and that also pushed the lots back, which we think that was that helped some of the concerns with the city. We all know some of the issues to the north and the slope stability and all that. We think what's happening to the north and some of the issues and concerns of people to the north, it's just not the same. I mean, I've looked at it. We do not want to create a problem for our homeowners, for us, and they're just not the same. Our vertical drop is around 7 feet from common water to top of bank. Up there, we're talking around 12 foot. And so just that additional 5-6 feet makes a big difference. The velocity of water, our engineers are saying is substantially different. And all those factors come into play. We still have to deal with the Corps is fairly adamant about not doing anything to the creek because they think the creek's working really well. We and our city engineers want to push back on that, and I'm working with them on trying. We got a meeting set for September 30th on putting riprap on the outside corners, and hopefully the Corps will lessen their stance on that. But that's really their domain. That's not mine, and that's not really the city's. And the Corps makes it pretty clear that that's whose creek that is. That's their creek, and so we're going to do something to make sure our customers are protected. We think we've done a good job because we're at a minimum of 30 feet before the bank starts cutting off up to 50 feet away. And the HOA owns that. The HOA will maintain that. It talks about in here, every homeowner will know that by separate instrument. It won't just be hidden in the documents at closing, but they will sign a document that we will be selling that, making it super clear. And we will make sure that the HOA has like an endowment in there that can maintain things in the future, maintain creek erosion in the future. We don't think it'll be there, but we never know. None of us know. And if it's my guess, because I've talked to the Corps many times, I think the Corps will still take a strong position. I'm hoping they will back off on some of it, but we don't know. That's their domain. They think the thing's working wonderfully. They don't want us to touch it. They don't want us to take out any trees, and we've agreed to that. Like leave it as a non-disturbed area, vines, poison ivy, everything. So they just have a different view on that than us. And when you go to the north, or I'm sorry, to the south, and look at the lot that's developed right immediately to the south of us, it's a large acre-plus tract. You can see where they took out the trees. They took St. Augustine right down, and big slope failure. And when the Corps saw that, they said, "Case in point, guys. That's why you don't touch it." And it's like they say, we look at hundreds of these. This is our domain. We live in this stuff, and they kind of convinced me of their theology and the nice, because I was originally thinking we're going to make it look great too, and then I backed off it and said, okay, we're going to leave it exact way it is, and we're going to put forces and teeth in our HOA documents that not only prohibits people from doing it, but there's absolute fines and penalties for them if they do go out there on their own some weekend and start clearing it. And the HOA board will be mandated to keep that, to enforce that. That's their job as HOA board members. We think that's the game plan, accompanying with the city, working with the city and with the Corps.
And the HOA board would be made up of residents that live within Blackberry Farms?
For the first few years, no. But once the declarant goes away, they'll slowly be replaced by residences.
I had more of an operational question. So one of the following cases tonight is Phase 2. We're only going to hear Phase 1, but when you develop Phase 2, if and when, the bridge and all that, I asked in the pre-session, how is all that equipment going to get back there? And I presume you're going to be using the streets to get back there for the materials. And how operationally, how will that happen when you're building Phase 2, particularly that bridge and all the heavy equipment that you might
We
need?
have to bring, this bridge is made of basically two arches. And one side has to come in through to the gun club, and one has to come in from our side. So the gun club, we've already been in contact with them. They'll grant us easements or permission of entrance, and that's how that bridge will get set. Once that bridge is in place, concrete trucks, and I'm thinking the city's most valuable possession, the fire truck, will, it's all got to meet ratings. I've talked to the fire chiefs. Taking that's got to go over, but that's how that's going to get built. I mean, that's a fully rated structural bridge, just like any other bridges in town.
Any questions of the applicant? Freddie?
Right. All the homes will be on piers that back up to the creek, number one. So the homes never, it has a possibility, we'll say, of settling or something like that, or being eroded under. If there's any pools that are built back there, they will also be on piers. But and basically that's so that it's not creating any additional load on that dirt that's wanting to rotate that soil or to push to make it go horizontally. But that's the way. I think other than that, we think that's the way to mitigate it. I mean, the retaining wall is really, it's only this tall. It's 3.5 feet. It's not heavy loads. And we've done a complete study on that. And for the, I forget what it was, global stability study has already been done. And they've taken the loads and they said that's fine, that's not affecting the loads. The other is the city's ordinance about the flood, about the erosion. That's where we think that we'll have this endowment, you might call it, or a large amount that if we don't do what the engineering department wants and what we're fine with doing, if we don't stabilize that, we think there will be something. I've already talked to George about it. We've not thrown what numbers in there, but it'll be several $100,000, a large amount of money that will protect everybody. That's our thoughts.
I have a slide of it. I know you have it in your packet of the erosion setback hazard exhibit. I can pass it on. I didn't make a slide of it.
Freddie, are you concerned where there's retaining walls or just on the lots where the retaining wall stops?
Where the retaining wall stops and then where the setback continues onto those properties.
So question is on the east end of Block C and lots 10, 11, 12, and 13, where they have straight property lines, your retaining walls stop on those flat areas, and you could get swirling or you could get erosion on those lots.
I'm sorry, which ones? I wasn't tracking.
Block C on the east end of Persimmon Drive at the cul-de-sac.
Okay.
The straight lines to the northeast and southeast, those property lines are not with retaining wall. Retaining wall stops on those straightaways.
On the cul-de-sac lots? Okay, yes.
And yet that setback line and potentially future erosion may occur within those lots. So what was the thinking on stopping the retaining wall on the?
I thought it would just go and slope down. It'll naturally just slope down on 3-to-1, on 4-to-1 slope, and then just hit native soil. All the trees will stay. So that's the reason. I wouldn't think, and that's the way it was on the original PD also, but Yeah, I would not think that that would have any concern. Meaning, there's so if it's where I'm, is there a way I can work this? I'm not. I mean, if I can point to it,
What do you want?
is there a way I can use the mouse?
Do you want?
Can I use? Can I have?
Is there a mouse down there?
There is.
See if it works.
Working.
No.
Yeah.
I'll listen and I'll move it.
Okay. The lots on the cul-de-sac, all that land behind them, if you look at yes, all that land behind there was a part of the lots. And that's where that whole peninsula is now part of the HOA. And I don't think there's any, at least I've never heard that there's a concern that there would be erosion that far away. If I'm tracking with you, I'm not sure I am. But that's where there's no retaining wall is on those long peninsulas, because we're just going to roll it. In our mind, retaining walls are not a positive thing necessarily. It's something you got to do because, trying to force things in smaller areas, and so we have that. But on phase 2, there's no retaining walls, and because we're just going to roll it down on a 3-to-1, and not on there, but on the new phase 2.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's no retaining walls there. We took all them out. The previous PD had all retaining walls around that complete yellow phase 2. Now the new one has none, which I think it's good. It's less to maintain, and I don't think there's any concern that that's going to erode. That there's not in our mind, or I haven't heard staff think there was either. And the same thing on those 4 big cul-de-sac lots where it backs up to the peninsulas. There are no retaining walls because I think it's better if it just goes off in a 4-to-1.
I hear the argument. My concern coming in, and I'll just key off. I was going to let it lie, but I'll key off of what Freddie's saying. If you're coming under phase 2, and as you're coming around what is Block C, which is the persimmon, come down and to the right. So that curve right, come up, to the right, to the right, to the right, no, to the right, you're at the right. And I want to go up to the retaining wall above those lots, right there. So if we get to a point that water is outside the channel and it's up against the retaining walls, when it hits that point corner where the retaining wall stops, and water's going to be on the wall and coming around that wall into that lot, I think you can, potentially get some eddy currents. And I have a little concern if you're in a flood situation and the wall's doing what it's designed to do, which is to stop bank erosion. And it's worked well in other areas. We see stuff in Euless or Arlington where these retaining walls are actually stopping erosion. It may not have helped the homeowner before, but now they're working. So I understand your argument, and the channel is directing away from it, but maybe turn the corner with the walls, taper it down, do something to where it's just not a sharp stop and eddy right there.
Yeah, I'm not.
And that's
opposed
just
to
a suggestion,
Yep.
but ultimately it's going to be up to the builder and the homeowners if there is an event and it floods. But those are deep enough lots that I'm not generally concerned about it eroding all the way up to the homes. That's my kind of thought on that.
One last question, too. I guess in regards to the homeowners association, obviously they're going to be responsible for maintaining or stabilizing the system. So typically in your past experience, how has that worked, and what's the funding needed for that, for typical repairs? Just some examples.
Okay, so we've never done one like this, just to be honest with you. I mean, very few have been on this active of a creek. But I have seen, I think it's something that we fund, and I'm not sure it'll ever get used, but sometime it might, and it's probably just a growing pot, that may never get used. But I think it's got to stay there forever. And
Again, personal experience, but all Denton Creek comes along a number of neighborhoods there. I just happen to live adjacent to one, and we have, I think, 54 homes. And so our dues may be 3 times as much, across the forest. But we maintain a 5-acre detention pond, park area that's actually floodland. We have 7 lots for 50 homes, or 7 HOA lots for the 54 homes. And being on that board, we just set up a reserve. And we had to build the reserve. It wasn't by the builder. But we looked at what could fail. We set an estimate with an engineering firm, and we've just built that reserve and maintained it. So stuff's not going to fail in 10 years, and they can set up a reserve. And if you're funding part of that reserve, it can be engineer backed, and I think be suitable for the distance of creek that we have here.
Do you mind me asking, how much is the HOA dues?
We've tried to get them. They've gone up, and we've tried to get them down over time, but about 1,000.
Okay. Yeah.
1,000 a year.
Yeah, and we're not gated communities, so we don't have the streets and all that stuff, so we can focus on the farm, that triangular shape, little green space in the middle there, and then we have the bridge too, to ultimately maintain, and then we have the creek. So we have a lot, but I mean, I'm thinking ours are going to be, $3,000, something like that. We're going to start fueling it right now, and it's what you guys should. I mean, we're going to demand it, but it's the right thing to do. And that's not a lot. We're in gated communities where they're $5,000, $4,500, and there's no amenities. There's just a front entrance and nothing else. And it's not in the city, but still, it's like similar. And so having a $3,000 is not out of line with the amenities that's in here.
Any other questions of the applicant? The little farm there, and as you come in, that whole amenity.
Yeah, that's not changing. We should have submitted it with us, but we didn't because it's not changing. But yep. And this is going to be more of an English farm, not necessarily a country farm. So it's got an English character to it. Not that that matters, but more informational.
Okay, thank you. There's some folks that have signed up. We may bring you back here in a minute, but I do have a question for George. Sorry, George, come on down. On this erosion hazard setback line, are you comfortable with all this?
Generally, I mean, while the lotting pattern doesn't meet the code of the erosion hazard setback easement to the letter, it's pretty darn close. And so with the retaining walls, as long as we can, make sure we get some sort of erosion stabilization down on the creek, and we're working with the Corps and Mr. Holmes on that. So.
Okay.
And George, by doing the wall, they can actually keep the slopes lower or keep the existing grade lower, and that retains more water. Not.
Yes. The main purpose of the erosion hazard setback easement is to go from the toe of the water, the flow line, up at a 4-to-1 slope, and then add 15 feet at the top, because we all know that a 4-to-1 slope is maintainable. That's something that you can manage. And so if you set everything back by that, then you know that in the future you can reestablish that 4-to-1 slope. Of course, creeks do meander over time, and erosion is a natural occurrence. It's going to happen. So.
Other questions of George while he's still down here? All righty. Thank you very much. Okay, so I will go to the public hearing portion. We do have several folks that have signed up to speak. Probably everyone knows the guidelines. We've got about 3 minutes to speak. Try to keep 2 to 3 minutes. Ashley has a friendly little bell that'll let you know when you're getting close or if you're not already there. So signed up first here is David Bell. Looks like it'll be followed by Dan and Pat McKillop, and then followed by Marla Williams. Mr. Bell.
Hi there. David Bell, 913 Parker Drive. Had a couple concerns, I guess. Mr. Holmes mentioned the additional instrument that would have to be executed that would notify future the home buyers, which is a good thing. Definitely need to have that notification. One thing I noticed when I looked up the documents online it was that that instrument was going to basically absolve the builder and the city of any future liabilities. So that, in a way, was a little bit of a concern. But the main thing with that disclosure, I believe that needs to really be done at contract execution time and not just be another document that's signed at closing. Because once you get to the closing table, there's so many documents the buyers are not going to understand or have time to look into it. So it definitely, I think, needs to be a requirement at contract execution. And there also probably needs to be something that put in there that when that homeowner sells their home eventually, that they would also be required to have notification to a future buyer before they or at the time that they would go under contract for that future buyer. Because 10, 15 years down the road, there could very well be a problem, and there could be 2 or 3 different buyers who have gone into that home. So that kind of notification needs to be passed along from buyer to buyer. The other thing I was wondering about was the study that the city did on Denton Creek. I don't believe, at least I haven't seen the final version of that yet, but the city presented a draft version back in January, and I think it might be important to wait for that final study. The former city engineer, Ken Griffin, indicated at the time they presented the draft that 10, 15 years down the road, the Blackberry Farms development could be having a lot of unhappy homeowners, kind of like there are upstream along Denton Creek because of flooding and erosion issues. So I would like to see exactly what that study says as far as what they're projecting for the creek in that area of Blackberry Farms. I think that really needs to be taken a look at before you go too far and getting private people into something that they don't know what they're getting into. Basically, those are my concerns with going forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Marcy, to follow up, does the city have any leverage regarding the notification on disclosures, whether it's a contract execution versus closing?
No, that's not under our purview. Obviously, that's why we were having the PD conditions and the plat conditions as bold as anything, but we cannot. That's an operational issue and a sales issue, which we really can't get into.
Okay. Same would apply for buyer-to-buyer kind of thing, the disclosure, all that. Okay.
Can I key off that
Sure, you bet.
as well? With it being with the PD, that's not. And one of my thinkings was that it would be in the covenants or bylaws or requirements, the HOA requirements, and I'm sure they will have that in there when they draft those. But those can be changed over time. But if it's with the PD, they'll have to abide by that.
Well, the PD specifically states who's required to maintain what and how that works. I mean, that is part of that PD document. When that information is shared with a potential purchaser, the city really doesn't have any control over that. Even if we wrote that as a condition, there's no way that we can enforce that.
But there's no way that they can unilaterally change the requirements through the HOA and say, no, each homeowner is going to maintain their own section.
No, I mean, we will have,
That would have
again,
to come
filed
back
as part of the
before.
plat, yeah, and it'll be part of the plat and the zoning.
George. Sorry. Figure if you're only going to be with us a couple more weeks or so, got to work you. And so the comment was regarding the draft Denton Creek study and the results of that. Where's the status of that report and its implication on this application?
The report's still in draft status. I know staff is working with the engineer on finalizing it. To my knowledge, there isn't any drastic changes. I can also let you know that during the development of the revised CDC application and discussion with staff about the flood study, we made sure that our consultant, Half and Associates, coordinated with Terry's consultant, O'Brien and Associates, and they shared models and so forth on making sure that we were using the correct model for the Denton Creek study as well as for Terry's, the Blackberry Farm property.
So they're talking to each other. The models are talking to each other, and it takes into account the development implications and upstream and all those things.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Next on the list was Dan and Pat McKillop.
Questions already answered in the earlier discussion.
Okay. Got 3 minutes. You sure? Okay. Marla Williams.
Hi there, Marla Williams, 137 Hollywood Drive. Just have a couple questions that I just couldn't find answers to in the documents that were out there. First of all, the drainage ditch that goes along Hollywood Drive was mentioned, but no detail as to, is it concrete? Is it in between fence lines? Inside a fence line? Where does it end? What is it anticipated to support? Those type of questions regarding that. And let's see, the minimum build from the back property line on Hollywood for the homes that are there, how far can they build back? I heard that, I guess the trees were anticipated to be kept there, but I wasn't sure, how many feet of trees are going to be kept, if that's known. I did see a couple lots had minimum home size requirements, but I didn't see any home size anticipation for this area. Just kind of curious what to expect as far as it being a neighboring community, as far as size of properties. And then my probably biggest objection at this point is the sidewalks for the kids. Sandy Lake is a disaster in the morning. I was very thankful the street department responded and actually put in a do not block the intersection little grid and stuff. That was great. But cars travel fast up and down Kimball Court. There's cars stopped, and I just want to make sure that the kids are safe walking along that east side of Kimball especially. So thank you.
On Hollywood Drive?
I am, yes.
130. So you're in the cul-de-sac portion?
No, I'm on the straight.
You're further on.
I'm on the straight, yeah.
Okay.
And talking for a couple neighbors on the creek side that are concerned about losing all the trees up to their fence line. They only have 10 feet behind their fence, and it's pretty swampy usually. So they're just kind of wondering, they've got 10 feet behind their fence, what's going in where, and what they can expect on their houses.
Okay.
And it just didn't really cover it. I don't know if it's concrete. I don't know if it's a natural ditch. I don't know. It just didn't say enough for me to understand that.
Are many of your compadres in the neighborhood about the access easement?
Absolutely not.
Well, and it's someone else's decision because it's their property
Yeah.
allowing, but you hadn't heard anything on that?
Yeah, I've heard absolutely not.
Absolutely not?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly what I've heard. Absolutely not.
Okay, got it.
Which I'm sorry, but I wouldn't want kids walking through my yard if you don't know if they're going to open a fence and let your dog out. It opens up anytime people are walking through your property. You never know what's going to happen. So I get that from that perspective. They bought their house the way it is.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on the? Yes, ma'am. I'll need you to come down. And while you're coming down, Marcy, if I could follow up the drainage ditch and how that was going to be addressed. And I was kind of pointing at George.
As George is coming down, I will address the other questions.
Okay.
On the phase one, the minimum square footage of the dwelling units are 3,000 square feet. Your minimum rear yard setback is 20 feet. I think that was two of her questions about the zoning. And then I will turn over to George about the drainage area.
I live at 204 Hollywood Drive.
Ma'am, hold on a sec.
Okay.
If I could get George, he's right
Okay.
behind you. Sorry.
Go ahead, George.
Because nothing has really changed with regards to that drainage ditch and how it was going to
No, it's never.
be implemented, right?
Well, so what happened, there's an existing drainage ditch.
Right.
It's a concrete lined channel. There were plans at one point in time for that to be enclosed in a pipe system. The hydraulics didn't work, and so the developer's chosen to leave the existing drainage channel as it is in concrete. They're going to accept that water in an inlet head wall form and then pipe that out to Denton Creek.
Across the applicant's property.
Through the applicant's property, okay. as it does today.
I was going to show where it was. There it is.
And so the blue area highlighted there, that's an additional that's an addition that staff requested so that the HOA can come in there and maintain an area. There's I believe they're proposing to build a retaining wall along the eastern side of that 10-foot drainage easement. And so with the retaining wall, you're going to have fill in place, and there are going to be trees that are lost with that process. But the purpose of that is for access and to make sure that there's positive overflow. If that pipe system that goes out to Denton Creek ever clogs, that the water will have a way to positively flow out to Denton Creek and not hopefully flood anybody's houses.
Okay. Okay.
Does that help explain that?
It does.
All right.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. If I could get your name and address for the record, I'm sorry.
Marty Crowley, I live at 204 Hollywood Drive, and very, very familiar with the neighbors who do not want an easement through their house. We have, as you know, if you've driven it, we have front, we don't have garages in the back, we have them in the front. Most people back out. And you're talking and put in a 200, we are at 204. We back out of our driveways. We do not want to back over children. It's not a safe area for them to do that because we swing out. So most people back out. And within 3 houses, we have 9 teenagers who are driving within that little area there. So I'm concerned about the children. I'm concerned about hitting. I have 6 grandchildren. It's not safe to put an easement there when we're backing out and kids are on the sidewalk racing, chasing, not paying attention. So it's very dangerous, and I don't believe my neighbors at 200 Hollywood are only thinking of themselves. They have teenagers, and they don't want their kids hurting other kids. Yeah. So I think that's bad. We have lost probably 15 feet of our property. And when you were talking about the sidewalks, we're the original owners. The city said they wanted to put it through our backyards. They wanted to put, and we're saying, you can't. It will fall into the creek. And B, you won't help us with the, with the creek at all. And so the deal was, if we wouldn't allow them to go through our property, we are responsible for any trees that fall in from our side. If it comes from the other side, then Carrollton, now Coppell, is responsible for those trees. Some of those trees are, we have a 110-year-old tree in our backyard on our property line, on the creek. If that thing goes over, it's going to block the entire creek. So these are concerns. There are big trees on the other side. So I think you guys really need to go out and look. You're welcome to go in my backyard. With the tree we have, it's pulled away when Grapevine lets out the dam, because they have to, because the ones above them have to, we flood. We had ducks in our backyard. Okay, it came to our 100-year line in 2015. The entire street flooded. So we have pictures. So I would request you guys to kind of come out, welcome to go through our backyard, and look how our wall has pulled away because we're on a curve. And we spent $25,000 on a wall that's falling. The one next to us at 208 Hollywood has fallen in. It's in the water. So I think you guys need to come and look and see what the creek really does when Grapevine has no choice but to release water. It went over the dam in 2015. There's a drone footage of it, and we all flooded. So I think you need to do a little more research and come out and look. We're happy to show you what it's like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who'd like? Yes, sir. And then we'll follow with a gentleman in the light-colored shirt afterwards, and then we'll come over here to blue.
I'm Sam Crowley. I'm her husband. I live at 204 Hollywood as well. I have one question and then a couple of comments. The question I have is, if you look at the newly plotted Block D, which is on the former Carrollton property, the green areas around it, the HOA is going to be responsible for maintaining that, but what is it going to be? Is it going to be cut down in grass? Are they going to leave it the wild jungle that it is now? Or what? I just want to understand what's going to happen with that property. I'm very happy that they've done what they did, because it means that where I am, I'm not going to have to look at the backyard of somebody else's house across the creek right now. So that's a good thing for me, but I just want to understand what that's going to be. There's an awful lot of property there that says the homeowners association is going to be responsible for maintaining it, but there's no specification for how they're going to maintain it. what standards does it have to be maintained to? Does the city have some? I assume they probably do, but I just want to understand that piece of it as well. That's my other question, because if you look at that drainage ditch, if they just go out 10 feet and build a retaining wall, then what's going to happen with the property between there? I don't have a house that backs on there, but I just want to make sure that of what's going to happen with that. So the other comment I will make to you is the single arch bridge versus the double arch bridge was a very good move, because as much stuff as we have floating down that creek, you would have had a backup coming all the way back to my house from the bridge if you had something that was anchored down in the center of that creek. So now you'll allow it to move through, and I think that was a very positive thing, a change in this plan. That's all my comments.
Very good. Thank you. I think I did hear the applicant articulate that it was going to be left in its natural state, a lot of the HOA areas, because if you change that condition, it'll create there'll be more of a negative implication than if you just leave it in its natural state. Okay. Any staff comment on that?
No.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Next, yes, sir, and then we'll follow gentleman in the blue. Okay.
I'm on 108 Hollywood Drive, which backs up to the easement and then the Blackberry Farms new development.
And if I could get your name for the record.
My name is Rajiv Belubi, 108 Hollywood Drive. So my questions, I have a few questions. My first question is, I'm a little concerned with the retaining wall that they're going to build that is right behind our property after the easement. And the retaining wall, what is it going to cause in terms of flooding to all the properties backing up to Blackberry Farms on Hollywood Drive? Because the entire Blackberry Farms development is going to be raised, and the flooding event in 2015, the water came very close to our properties, and with all this new retaining wall and the Blackberry Farms development being raised, could that make the situation even worse than it is right now? Okay. And the second question I had was the easement that is already there, the 10-foot concrete easements that's behind our property that actually falls within our property. We actually own that property. But there's going to be another drainage which is going to have come behind that easement. As it is with that drainage, the easement that we have now, with the water flowing out there, we have a lot of problems with critters and mosquitoes and all of that. Now with an extra drainage coming there, what's that going to make? What's going to happen with that? So it's just going to get worse.
So who will maintain that?
Who's going to maintain that?
I would suspect individual property owners will have to maintain that. But
yeah, so the easement right now is beyond our property. I mean, we own it, but it's behind our fence. So there's no way we can maintain that currently. So.
I will follow up with your question. I'll ask the applicant here after we get through the public hearing. Okay. Yes, sir?
And if you could sign, sir, if you spoke, if you can sign outside before you leave, just so we have your name and address for the record.
Anyone else after the gentleman in blue that would like to speak on this case? Yes, sir. Or anyone else? Okay. Yes, sir.
Dan Fuller. I'm at 120 Hollywood Drive, so pretty close to the end of the cul-de-sac, and echo some of the sentiments of my neighbors. Would also like to understand how much the grade of this development is going to be changed, just with them backing up to my property. Are they now going to be 5 feet above the grade of my home and sort of looking right back into the backyard? And the setback on the back of the home, 20 feet, seems pretty short. That's about me to you, and a little concerned about how close they would be to the back of our fence there as well. Also, we get a lot of animals back there, and when construction starts, we've seen bobcats, raccoons, armadillos. Is there a plan to control that? There's snakes back there. They're all going to start looking for somewhere, and they already come into our backyard sometimes. What can we see in terms of control there? And would also like to understand if, I guess my other concern has been covered. So that's it.
The what?
My other concerns have been covered by neighbors.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm good.
Hey, quick question for you. You said you're close to the end of the cul-de-sac. Is your home a two-story home or a single-story?
It is. It's two-story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure two-story backed up to two-story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. And final gentleman. Yes, sir. And no one else would like to speak after him? Okay. Okay.
First of all, thank you for doing this. So my name is Rajiv Lulla. I'm from 112 Hollywood Drive.
Okay.
And the question again is, we're actually next-door neighbors, both Rajivs, if you noticed. So the question is about that same easement that Rajiv raised. It's about, I think George said that it's we've tried covering it in the past, but it did not work. The hydraulics somehow did not work out. I'd like to know if that could be reconsidered. I think it might help solve some of the problems that Rajiv mentioned. And with all this new development coming in, is there a possibility to think about that entire channel to be covered up in some kind of a pipe at some kind of a dimension, which was not possible earlier, but now with houses coming in the backyard covering both ends of it, and water has to go somewhere. If it is covered with the right size and the right material, the right kind of technology, has anything changed in all these years? We've lived in this house for about 12 years. They are 25-year-old properties. I don't know when the last test was, and if the results could change now.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak on in this public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. So if I could ask the applicant to come back up. A lot of questions tied to retaining walls, concern on the retaining walls, the potential negative effects of watershed, covering up. At one time it was considered, the drainage easement was considered to be closed. Can that be reconsidered? Animal control. That's kind of a different item there, but could you share what how you would handle those items?
Here's what I believe is accurate, and George may have a different opinion, but I think it's accurate. They started talking. The reason the existing flume, concrete flume, could not be covered is things that I don't technically understand, but it was about head pressure on water, and it was things that was really engineering level. And I understand most of the things, but that is one where I got off the boat. I didn't understand what George's concern was. Our engineer did, and they ultimately realized that they had to take that out, and we had to increase the size of our pipe that goes to the creek because of some of these head pressures and what it would do. There again, I don't, and skin friction of water and stuff that I can't calculate. I don't have that experience. So, but I think that was based on staff's recommendation that really that could not be covered, and we could not encase that into a box culvert. That's what we were going to put it in. On the retaining wall, I don't think that there's any way that would have a negative effect from a flooding of the existing homes because of the pipe of the drainage easement that we're putting in to eliminate that. And the engineers, my understanding, I walked out there on the night that the Friday night was supposed to be the high flood time on June of 2015. Remember, that was the high point. And Mike Garza told me it's the high point to all your neighbors. And so we had people down on DeForest Court. This was like a party. Everyone was out Friday night. And I was out on this side on Friday night, and it did not, it never flooded. This property did not flood. It didn't go all the way to the creek because there are snakes, and I almost stepped on a snake. But it was because I was walking from casual water to casual water, little where grass clops were, and I was going there, and so there were snakes. But I don't know how we'll deal with snakes. I think ultimately, hopefully, they go away somehow. But and critters, there's deer out there. There's bobcats. There's deer. It's pretty cool, especially on the other side of the creek. It's a true wildlife area. But the retaining wall is going to be a stone wall that's around 3.5 foot tall, and that's on the other side of the drainage easement. where the blue line is, and then the homes will be set back 20 feet from that. So the homes are back 10 more feet than what they were originally with the former plan, 10 additional feet. So it's effectively from 20 feet, they're now at 30 feet. So I think that is a benefit to the existing Hollywood owners.
And then with regards to the grade difference, will the grade of Blackberry Farms be higher than?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it'll be higher by around the 3.5 feet. Yeah, and it may be a hair more than that. I mean, their homes now, we could never build them at that level. They're a little lower than, we have to be a minimum 2 foot above the 100-year flood.
Okay.
And so we're actually going to be a little above that.
But all the drainage is will be engineered to shed toward Denton Creek and away from Hollywood.
Yeah, they're going to have more protection with that than they have now. That doesn't seem possible because there's a wall there in homes. But if you think about all that water, there's two different kinds of floods, and George would know more about this than me. But when we're talking about a local flood, that's one issue. But the big floods we're concerned about, and what we're concerned about in 2015, is the watershed of Denton Creek and ultimately Grapevine Lake. That watershed, so the amount that we're going to fill on Blackberry Farm is kind of like a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of foot acres of water in Grapevine Lake. So if it's going to flood, it has nothing to do with Blackberry Farms. It's Grapevine Lake and the watershed of Grapevine Lake, which is huge. And Blackberry Farm is literally a very, very, very small percent of that. It will go around Blackberry Farm just like it would now. It would go over Blackberry Farm to their homes. In this case, after this, it will go around it. But it's going to be the exact same things. And George knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. But he's so. And as far as any trees, we have the same goal and desire to keep every tree we can that separates Hollywood homes as ours, and we will navigate around those as much as possible. We're going to work with all the homeowners to do that. I'm sure there's some that are going to be questionable trees that are right on the edge, and we'll keep them. I mean, that are right on the edge of the retaining wall, and so we'll keep those.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a question about trees falling. It becomes the responsibility of the homeowner to clear the tree.
Yeah, and in this case, the HOA, because the HOA owns all the property on the creek. So if they go down, HOA's got to get them out. Right now, I think the city does take some of that responsibility, but I think technically it's the homeowners.
Okay. Hang on a sec. Any other questions of the applicant while he's up here? Okay. Thank you. Oh, hey, George. How you doing? Yep. Last time. About the covering of the flume, the hydraulics. If you can explain it to me in simpleton terms, that'd be great. And then, should we be concerned as a city? I know it's a I wouldn't call it a special event. It's an event. When the 2015 flood, that's an event. And how to develop a city can't make a developer address for that. Was that a 500-year event or whatever that was? They can for up to 100-year with the 2 feet above floodplain and all those things. Does it become too onerous for those other kinds of events?
So we don't have any rules and regulations to tell them that they have to build above beyond the 100-year event or the 1% chance, or we don't say you got to build outside the 500-year floodplain. That's just not something that
would be just too onerous.
It would be, and I know FEMA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is updating the state of Texas hydraulic models, the hydrology models, but those haven't been released yet.
But with regards to that, though, and the hydraulic models and the Corps of Engineers, they're going to have the final say on clearing the clearance as it relates to this.
So FEMA is the one that gives the authorization for the fill of the in the floodplain, the CLOMAR, the conditional letter of map revision. And that document has basically analyzed the floodplain area, taken into account the Trinity River that's nearby, the Elm Fork of the Trinity River. I apologize. This site is actually really the floodplain elevation is driven by the Elm Fork Trinity River backup. There's a backwater condition that happens across this site, and so that's what sets the 100-year floodplain elevation in this area. As the water rises in Denton Creek, the water is going to continue to rise through their pipe that's through the subdivision, and it's going to come up outside over by the channel, the concrete flume to the west. And so they're not proposing a flap gate or anything on the end of the 6x5 box culvert. So that'll be a continual occurrence. Just like it happened in 2015, the water will rise over there in that location. I remember specifically I went to Hollywood and looked in one of the inlets that's out in the street, and the inlet's 6-8 inches below the top of curb, and there was water sitting right there. So that occurrence will continue to happen.
But that's because of the backwater. It has nothing to do with this development. It's the
Correct.
backwater.
That's a backwater condition. And in 2015, they were releasing from Lake Louisville as well as Lake Grapevine, the uncontrolled release from Lake Grapevine. And so they both combine at the Elm Fork, right at the bridge at Sandy Lake. So that's what really a lot of the problem was. As far as the hydraulics with the concrete flume, the city staff never told the developer that they can't pipe that system, convert it to a piping system and put it underground. They made the choice that I guess I would assume that it would be financially unfeasible for them to do that. As an engineer, I like to believe anything is possible with the right pocketbook. And so in this case, they chose to, obviously, they had to build, they're going to build a 6x5 box culvert through their development to keep the hydraulic grade line below the ground. They couldn't do that and carry it beyond, is what I'm being told. But I never actually saw any hydraulics from beyond their property line with the new box culvert system.
So should that thing be covered?
From staff standpoint, it doesn't matter either way. Okay. It's currently uncovered. It can remain that way. But if it does get covered, it needs to meet all the requirements and make sure that the hydraulic grade line is below the surface.
Okay. Thank you very much, George.
One quick question. Sorry. I guess in regards to the erosion control setback, you talk about measuring from the toe, but I guess for my benefit, what's the difference between that and doing the 100-year floodplain and then 2 feet of freeboard? What would be the difference?
So one is talking more about erosion issues, and the other one is purely flooding. The floodplain has nothing to do with erosion issues. Two different issues going on.
Well, I guess my question is, if I were looking at that site map, and I'm assuming you could do the setback based on the toe measurement or the 100-year floodplain plus 2 feet. Is that correct?
The measurement for the erosion hazard setback easement has nothing to do with the 100-year floodplain.
But you could measure it that way. I mean, other cities do that. Is that correct?
I don't know what other cities do. I can tell you we modeled this one very similar to the city of McKinney when we did that one. Before my tenure here at the city of Coppell, I did a subdivision project in McKinney, and that's where I first encountered that.
Well, the reason I was asking
it's been a few years since that happened.
I wanted to know what the difference was. If I was looking at that map, if it was measured differently based on the 100-year flood and 2 feet of freeboard, where that line would be compared to where the current setback is based on the measurement from the toe.
So along the floodplain, as you guys noted earlier, most of it has a retaining wall they're building, and so somewhere that if you're building the retaining wall along there, that line would be measured 2 foot above that along that retaining wall.
Public hearing is closed. Discussion by the commission. Doug?
I was just going to follow up and kind of ask George's opinion, but I have my own. So you're good. If we, as far as the bypass drainage, the blue L that's up there, that's overland, and it's to supplement if the pipe gets clogged.
Right.
Pipe's going to get clogged if there's debris. I don't like the idea of two pipe systems. You would need, if you have debris and it clogs the first, it likely could clog the second, carrying the same amount of water. So it would be designed similar size, I think. So just in development of lots, typically if you're doing a bypass, I want it to be open so it has some place to go if there is debris. Just my thought on that. First comment.
Next. I guess my concern is with the variance with the erosion control setback. Again, just a lot of concerns with the water going through the planned development, which I'm a proponent for, but I think we need to have every safeguard in place. And for me, it's hard to provide the variance because, again, when I look at those lots that have the setback on their property, I look at your reason here in the last sentence is there's no impact on proposed homes, but at some point there may be some impact on their landscaping, their pool that they install, near the back of their property. So really that's my concern with the variance request.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would like to comment that there are some things about this proposal that could be improved, but compared to where we were when this started 4 or 5 years ago, this proposal is a vast improvement. I don't like the walkway sidewalk deal on Sandy Lake not being fixed first, but the truth is the city normally puts that sidewalk in. They do in my neighborhood. It's a quarter of a mile from this property. Flooding is a huge concern over there. There was a time during the recent time period where the water was almost up to the under structure of the bridge at Sandy Lake, and it looked like a lot of land was going to flood. The soccer fields were underwater. You could go swimming there. You could go off a dive board there and you wouldn't hit the bottom. But if FEMA, the city engineers, come up with this proposal and say it works, their judgment is probably better than ours. This proposal is better than leaving it at natural land, because if we leave what's there 3-4 years from now, land prices may be another 25% higher, but somebody's going to want to build something there. This is a lower density residential proposal. The next guy is going to want an office building or another healthcare facility or a retirement facility in this location. Using this location in Coppell for residential is an excellent idea, and it needs to get done one way or the other, because Coppell is out of developable land. This is like the last major tract of land you can put something on. And it's a whole lot better, I think, for all the neighborhoods around here, including mine, that'd be residential. So I'm in favor of this proposal, even though there may be an open ditch, even though there's a problem with an HOA maintaining natural land. I pay dues to my HOA every year, and I don't like it because they got to rebuild a wall because a motorist runs across River Chase through some back alley fence. But you pay to get it fixed every year. And getting the common areas here that have flooding problems with more area from the water and a physical, financially responsible party to maintain it beats what we got today. If you had another Lake Grapevine release and substantial flooding in that area, who's going to go fix it? Only the city would have the equipment ability to go finance it and try and fix a major problem. If there's a big development there, with 74 residences, fairly large, expensive homes, and a funded HOA, the problem doesn't occur. Not a perfect world, but I think this proposal is the best solution available.
Thank you, Glenn. Anybody else? I'll throw my last. Oh, Sue, go ahead.
I'd like to thank you for coming in with this proposal. It's kind of an interesting concept, but I have a couple of, I guess, questions. One of the items that you talked about early on, Mr. Holmes, is having some type of preservation and conservation easement over the top of the HOA. Is that something that we could get filed with the plat when we talk about that in the next the next item? But that might be something that you can do, and that the Corps of Engineers is actually going to probably require you to do, is put a conservation and preservation easement over that HOA land. That way trees can't be taken out, it can't be underbrush without permission by the Corps. It does a lot of things that I think you're trying to get done out there. This second comment has to do with these homes actually being built, and I think you said 3.5 foot out of the 100-year. Legally, you're only required to do 2 foot above your 100-year. But it seems to me that all these homes, including the homes on Hollywood Court, are actually in the standard project flood. And so that's going to happen. Erosion happens, flooding happens, and once that standard project flood hits Dallas, all of downtown Dallas will also be underwater. So I'm not as concerned about this, because if that flood does hit, not just these homes, but everywhere is going to be done. The 3 foot retaining wall that you're proposing along the stream bed, and I heard you say that there's going to be a global stability, that there was a global stability analysis already done on it. But my question, with a 3 foot retaining wall, you actually don't have to do a structural design, and the retaining wall is actually to hold the soil back, not necessarily to protect against erosion control, and erosion that hits because of the flowing stream. So I guess I'm a little bit concerned that maybe that there needs to be a structural design for the erosion issue, not necessarily the retainage issue. So, but other than that, I kind of like this project. It's a good use of this. Now that you have all the items in place, there's just a few more hurdles I think you need to get over, but.
A couple comments. I think there was a good discussion regarding the flooding, the drainage, and the erosion. It seems as though that measures have been taken to mitigate the concerns, certainly for the folks on Hollywood. The sidewalk is a concern, so that's probably a comment more as much for the developer as it is for the city in terms of the children walking to the school. So trying to potentially parallel path that with the development would be a good idea, because it is going to be tricky for those kids to figure out how they get to school in the morning. I do like the fact you're starting the HOA with an endowment. It does seem like there's a lot to maintain on the property, which will be expensive. But would agree this seems to be a good use of the property.
Yeah, I guess my final comments here. I do think that the application is better this go round than it was last time. I recognize there's a lot of issues centered around the erosion and the drainage. Engineers, the city engineers, the developers' engineers, the modeling and things like that. I got to believe that they're going to address appropriately drainage as it relates to the requirements. I am a little bit concerned about the erosion hazard setback, like Freddie mentioned, but with staff's comments that it's just right there at the line, it could go either way. I would err on the conservative side, but I got to believe overall, the way this thing is being designed, I think some of that stuff's going to take care of itself. The covered drainage flume, I think that's a decision by the applicant on which way to go. And they have chosen to go one way, and there won't be a negative effect because of that, either whether it's covered or uncovered. So I think that's an applicant's decision to do that. I do like the comment by Sue about the conservation, how that might happen. I don't know if, Marcy, if that gets addressed here, or if that is like a conditional kind of thing that we tack on, or is that something that just would be considered as part of the case going forward to council?
That could be a recommendation as a condition that, which I think is the intent anyhow, that the common areas generally remain in their open natural state. You know, there might be some, work that needs to be done there, but at least we all understand that we don't intend it to be clear cut and,
Okay.
that it stays as natural as possible.
Okay. But I do agree with Glenn that this is a higher and best use, and I'm convinced that the applicant will build quality homes in this development. He's done that across the community. The sidewalk thing does bug me. We got to keep our kids safe. I see the other side of the story about no way access easement. I see both sides, but we got to have the ability of our kids with a safe route to school, and I might stop short of recommending that you consider chipping in on the cost of that sidewalk because you got a break on the other side. But I would like for you to hear me that that you really should consider chipping in on that. Because I do believe you got a big break on the other side with the tree mitigation, that reduction. And I do believe, finally, that the HOA, the way it's being set up with the endowment, I do think there'll be a proactive approach to addressing some of this. I like that setup. There's some questions on operations, but I think it's stronger, it presents a stronger way of maintaining some of these common areas long term. So all in all, I can support the application as is, and just hope that the applicant really chips in on that sidewalk. I'm not going to make it mandatory, but I really would like to see some kind of participation there. So those are my comments. If there's any other comments, or if there's a recommendation by the commission?
And are we going to, I guess on page 3 of 4 for the amended PD, are we going to add any other, suggestions or?
You mean the hike and bike trail, all those things?
Actually, further up with the homeowners association and things like that, are we going to amend any of that or add language to that?
Marcy, this is already pretty much included, is it not?
What's on the screen now is these are the plan development conditions that will be attached to the ordinance as we sit right now. Again, there are some questions about the masonry wall in front of the building, in front of the homes. But as underlined here is how we were going to attach it to the PD.
So just like additional clarification required, are those questions that staff needs now, or is that something as part of the final approvals?
Yeah, additional clarification will come between now and City Council on that one item.
Gotcha.
The other outstanding conditions in terms of, working out between the Corps and the city, that is a condition of, approval subject to. Like these are the outstanding conditions that aren't addressed in the PD conditions that are attached to the packet. Is that
get you covered,
enough?
Freddie? Okay. Is there a motion by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that PD 259R-SF-7/9 Blackberry Farm be approved as written with the following change. On Exhibit A, Item K, which reads, the homeowners association shall be responsible to maintain the storage basin ponds being constructed with the development. Stay. And then a sentence be added. The city attorney shall approve the homeowner association documents, which shall be recorded in the deed records of Dallas County, Texas. And that document shall set architectural standards, leaving the common area in as most natural state as possible. Period. This will hopefully preserve the floodplain issue. It will preserve the natural look of the property, but it won't tie the developer's hands too tightly. And it should satisfy the Corps that the financial ability to maintain the areas next to the creek exists.
Can I ask you to maybe amend the term common area? Because all of the common lots are all common areas, and some of those do need to be maintained. The ponds will need to be maintained. So I think we need to pick a term related to the creek.
Actually, I can enumerate those common areas that are the creek areas versus those that are the pocket park and the entry features. We can specifically note which ones need to stay natural.
Very good.
I think it's like 7X and something.
Yeah, you can finalize it, Marcy, by making sure the green area is what is to be maintained in the natural state.
As an exhibit.
As an exhibit, yeah, that'll work.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Guerra. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Robinson, Maurer, Haas, Portman, Guerra, Blankenship in favor. None opposed. The motion carries.
Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for the comments from the public. It is always very valuable to hear input from the public. So as we move on to item 5 this evening, the second item on the agenda, or should we adjourn for the evening? No, I'm teasing. All right, item 5, consider approval of the Blackberry Farm preliminary plat. Sorry, wrong one. No. Sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, let me reboot here. Number 5, item 5 on the agenda, consider approval of Blackberry Farm preliminary plat, a revised preliminary plat to subdivide 54.8 acres of property to permit the development of 74 single-family lots and 9 common area lots located on the north side of Sandy Lake Road, approximately 750 feet northeast of Starleaf Street, that being an extended street, at the request of Denton Creek Land Company Limited and Blackberry Farm Limited, being represented by Lynn Cadlick of Cadlick and Associates. Marcy with the staff report.
Okay. Again, this is a preliminary plat that looks a whole lot like the detail plan you guys just looked at. I'm not going to go through all the details again, but the conditions on the plat basically address a lot of what we're talking about in terms of who maintains what, retaining walls, and this and that. There's 10 conditions that are already on the plat. Staff is recommending approval of that plat with a few additional conditions. Some, like number 11, that there'll be no alley provided on any lots. It is a subdivision regulation that we are waiving as part of this plat. That the drainage study be approved by city engineer prior to the filing of the final plat for phase 1 for this development. Side yard setback of 5 feet on lots 1 through 20 Block D. That the homeowner association shall be responsible to maintain the stabilization along the creek bank of Denton Creek from erosion. That each lot owner shall be notified to provide a hold harmless agreement by separate instrument that the city and the developer are not liable for future erosion of the creek bank. Homeowner association shall be responsible to maintain the storage of the basins/ponds being constructed with the development. I deleted the erosion control setback because that's already a condition on the plat. And that what we were talking about also, that the stream bank erosion protection will require approval from the U.S. Corps of Engineers, and no final plats will be filed or worked until that's approved. And finally, there was just a typo that on note number 6 that actually needs to delete lot 15. So that being said, it's basically what we talked to. I took a lot of the conditions from the PD and made sure that they are reflected on the plat.
Okay. Thank you, Marcy. Any questions of staff? Ready?
Marcy, I had a question. It just came to me, but I guess for number 14, for example, if there was some major improvements needed to the stabilization, should there be some language in there about, I guess, providing adequate access? Because, you know, maybe a few steps going down there, but if you have to bring in some construction equipment to repair one of the walls or something, would it be fair to include that language in there about adequate access? Sorry.
I mean, again, that's all within an easement itself. I'm trying to think if there's. There are drainage and access easements that stub out to that creek, and I think that's probably the purpose and intent of all that. Kind of in the middle, off that persimmon cul-de-sac.
Marcy, wouldn't the homeowners association be able to authorize access to repair its land, though?
Well, I was going to say, it's I thought he was talking about physically getting there. The HOA maintains the land, so therefore they will allow access for its maintenance.
Yeah, I would think so.
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't
I guess my question was initially is how to get there. When it's being constructed, typically there's stairs or something just to go walk down there and maintain it. But if you have to bring in some type of equipment to do a major repair, if that's not planned or constructed initially, there's going to be issues accessing that. And I understand with the more open spaces, but on the north side of where that, I guess, lot or block C is, if you needed access to that and you needed to bring equipment in, how would that be done?
And again, I'll maybe let Terry help me with this one too, but there are periodic, those 20-foot wide drainage access easements that would allow equipment at least 20 foot wide from the dedicated streets onto the floodplain areas. Goes right here.
Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Would the applicant like to add anything to the proposed? Are you in agreement with the staff report and conditions as presented?
No
Doug?
question.
Okay, maybe we need to bring the applicant up. Sorry.
I believed the intent of the application was to have the HOA maintain the retaining walls that are going to be along the creek. And those will be outside of the private property. Is that correct?
Not the retaining walls on the back of the lots. That's what you're referring to, because those will actually be on their property.
Not. So along the creek, any of the retaining walls along the creek, those aren't HOA maintained?
Well, there's currently with the plan, there's no retaining walls like on the bank of the creek. So I'm just trying to define what you're saying. On the bank of the creek, there's no erosion control on the bank of the creek. That's what we've got July 30th meeting with the Corps about. But all along those lots, there is a designed wall that is all engineered, even though it's only 3.5 foot tall. All of them have been engineered and are part of our engineered submittal plans that the city already has. Does that answer your question?
Are those walls going to be within the private lots or outside the private lots?
They're within the private lines.
So
those will ultimately be a maintained wall by the homeowner, but we have those around the city a lot. They're only 3.5, probably at the maximum 4, because of the contours of the land, probably the maximum of 4.5 feet tall. They're 3.5 to 4.5 foot tall.
Terry, if I can, condition number 3 says retaining walls are to be constructed of stone and maintained by the lot owner. If the owner fails to maintain the wall, the HOA has the right to repair the wall and assess the lot owner, as the city has no responsibility for retaining walls on private property. So that's saying, is that the question you're asking?
I'm sorry, I had in my head that what I'm going to call erosion control along the creek, the walls that we were talking about earlier, that the 3.5 foot wall or tall walls, I believe that those were what was going to be maintained by the HOA. And when you got back up against Hollywood and you were raising the neighborhood, those would be within lots and that would be maintained by the homeowner. So where I was going to go with my questioning was to differentiate a retaining wall that was going to be maintained by the homeowner versus the HOA. But if they're all going to be on private property and individually maintained, then that's that. I'm good.
Thank you. Discussion by the commission? Is there a motion by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will move that Blackberry Farm preliminary plat be approved, subject to all the city conditions stated therewith.
We have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Robinson. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Robinson, Maurer, Haas, Portman, Guerra, Blankenship in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
All righty. Item 6 this evening is to consider approval of Blackberry Farms Phase 1, a final plat of Phase 1 to subdivide 36.5 acres of property to permit the development of 54 single-family lots and 8 common area lots located on the north side of Sandy Lake Road, approximately 750 feet northeast of Starleaf Street Extended, at the request of Denton Creek Land Company Limited and Blackberry Farm Limited, and being represented by Lynn Craddock of Craddock & Associates. Staff report by Marcy.
This is the absolute last Blackberry Farm case we have this evening. This is actually the final plat for the first phase development, which is 54 lots. The lot sizes range from 9,000 to 15,000. There's an average of about 11,633. And then, as we talked about, most of the common areas, except for the common area 9X, will be developed with this first phase. We didn't talk about very much, but this is where the farm area is going to be, and part of that, there's going to be a private drive that runs from the street down to Sandy Lake as basically emergency access. That was something that was negotiated when the zoning came through. And again, these will be built with their first phase of development. That being said, these are the same conditions we just saw, but we want them all to be reflected on all plats. So staff is recommending approval of final plat Phase 1, subject to the same conditions.
So, what about that sidewalk? So, I would like that sidewalk to be built in conjunction with this Phase 1. So it's in place, whether it's the city or whether it's developer participation or what. How do we, I'd like that note on this Phase 1.
My understanding is that we anticipate that the city will be building that sidewalk. So would you like that prior to the first certificate of occupancy for the first home?
How would we normally do it? I mean, I just feel that strongly about the sidewalk being in place, because whether it's the first home or the 10th home or whatever, if there's kids that are going to be going to and from school, there needs to be a place for them to be walking.
Right. It's always a little tricky, as you know, to require off-site improvements that's not adjacent to this property. Because there will be sidewalk adjacent to the property which he has control over. Legally, you can recommend as part of your motion that the sidewalk be in place prior to, and actually, to be candid, I will talk to our city attorney and see the best way we can do that between now and city council.
Is the builder required to put it on his property at least?
You know, he's definitely going to do it on his property. It's just the off-site, which is it gets a little bit tricky.
It becomes onerous to tie the builder to something that the city's doing off-site.
Whether it's, whether it's the applicant chipping in a little piece of the cost or it's the city putting it in, I just want it in place. So that when homes are being sold and people are moving in, when people obtain a CO and they're in and school starts, there is that facility for kids.
Let me, again, I would make this part of your recommendation, and between now and council, we will check with engineering so their timing is really, and his construction time, and see what we can work out.
And that's whether it's the city doing it or whatever. Okay. George, you have a comment there? Sure, we'll call you down.
So obviously, we understand that this sidewalk needs to be in with this development. Now, that's the purpose of it, right? And we were actually going to approach Terry about possibly doing a developer's agreement for him to actually build it and the city pay for it. so it would happen at the same time. That's probably new information to him, but that's something that myself and Kent Collins were talking about previously.
Okay. So, thank you, George.
Is there going to be, to get the access to property, or I'm thinking about the landscape company that's there, are you going to have to berm or retain or do something to make that sidewalk fit?
So there's an existing retaining wall there.
Okay.
So the sidewalk will be up against that existing retaining wall. We'll have to build a railing on the north side of the sidewalk so that folks don't fall off the retaining wall. So that's already the plans are already drawn up for that project.
So this can happen fast. It's not there's nothing that could delay. My only concern is tying something that a third party is doing to a builder, and the builder can have all the greatest intentions in the world, but you can affect them financially or whatever if it gets into time. And if it's the difference in a month, you don't want to bankrupt the guy because we're delayed a month with a neighbor who's fighting the sidewalk. So I like the approach where they're building and compensated.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, what's the opinion of cost for that sidewalk? I guess since you said you had the design already, just out of curiosity.
I don't actually know off the top of my head. Sorry.
5 digits or 6 digits? You don't want to venture there, huh?
Preach cheap.
I don't like pulling things out of my hat. So.
All right. Thank you, George. Marcy, you were done with your presentation? Yeah.
No, again, I can read these into the record, but basically, staff is recommending approval subject to those conditions.
Okay. So if the applicant could come up, please. Your thoughts on the staff recommendations here?
That's a great idea. It's news to me, like George said, but I think we would absolutely, facilitate it. I'm sure it's a 5-digit number. The challenge, probably the most difficult thing is the handrail, the guardrail. You know how that anchors and stuff. But that's not a big thing. It's just a galvanized rail, probably similar to what's on DeForest Road on the south side.
Okay.
It's a pipe.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you would
it's not beautiful, but it's
be open to the city, working with the city on
a development agreement. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions of the applicant? Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve discussion by the commission. I was going to make a motion that we approve Phase 1 final plat of Blackberry Farms with the conditions as stated, with the additional recommendation that the city work with the applicant to secure the implementation of the sidewalk prior to or in conjunction with the first CO of the development. Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Haas. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Can Commissioner Maurer? Maurer. Second, Commissioner Maurer. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Robinson, Maurer, now I'm on. Haas, Portman, Guerra, Blankenship in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you to the folks that came down to share their thoughts on this case. I do think it'll be a valuable addition to our community. Item 7 on the agenda is a public hearing to consider approval of PD-197R4-H, Live Work, Lot Number 1, Block B, Old Coppell Townhomes, by the Peepcorn family applicant, being a zoning change request from PD or Plan Development Number 197 revised historic to Plan Development 197 revision number 4 historic, to attach a detailed site plan for 1 2-story 3,000 square foot live work building on 0.255 acres of property located at the southeast corner of South Coppell Road and McNear Drive at the request of Sean Peepcorn, being the prospective purchaser. We have a staff report by Mary Perrin Boswell. Mary?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. This public hearing, we're looking at a piece of property located at the southeast corner of Old Coppell Road and McNair Drive. Originally, this was part of PD 197, which was approved back in 2004. It's one of the last two remaining vacant pieces, which is also on the agenda for tonight. It was originally approved for future commercial use. What they're planning on doing is to actually do a live-work unit on the property. The proposed, or the applicant is looking to do one live-work unit with a photography studio on the first floor, dedicated conference room and office. In addition, on the first floor, they're looking for some, they will have a bedroom, a kitchen, and a living room that will serve as a flex space as well. With this development, we're looking at 4 on-street parking spaces, 2 driveway spaces. So here's the 4 on-street, 2 driveway, as well as a 3-car garage. In order to achieve these 4 parking spaces, they are proposing to provide a sidewalk and parking easement on the property. With this kind of development, because it is less than 2 acres, typically they are required to provide about 30% of landscaping. With this proposal, you're looking at 58% of the site being landscaped with grass, trees, shrubs, and ground cover, as outlined on the exhibit. They're going to save about 2 trees that are on site and provide an additional 8 trees. They are proposing to add an 8-foot fence in this area, as well as this area here. The remaining fence is already pre-existing, so they're just wanting to tie into the existing fence. So they are asking for an 8-foot wood fence versus a typical 6-foot wood fence. And you've got this little notch out over here, which may look a little odd. However, the neighboring property has a window that comes actually to the property line. So the applicant will be providing a 5-foot access and maintenance easement, and the fence will be adjusted to outline that window. So if there is some kind of emergency, they can get out the window and go out to the rear of the property or to the front of their own property. This is just an illustration showing the proposed layout. This is the first floor. The blue represents the work portion, the green represents the living area, and the yellow represents a flexible space. It's a living room that can be used for either live or work references. Here we are looking at the elevations of the property. This is the front elevation. You've got a stone wainscot it's a low wall that outlines the front porch area. And you've got the pilasters here, the columns. It'll have a wood columns. You have a second floor walkout balcony area, wood trusses. The other materials on the facade will be a hardy board over here and a standing seam metal roof. Here are some of the examples of the materials that are going to be used on the facades. This is one of the side facades. So you see the stone kind of goes on along the side, along the columns. You've got some cedar stained shaker wood tiles, as well as hardy board. You've got the vertically aligned windows with various mullions here. This is the other 2 facades. So this is the rear of the property. They will have an outdoor covered patio area. This will be the garage area. This is the side elevation, or the north elevation. This is the facade that will be out on McNair Drive. So you've got a 3 car garage area. The stone carries through, as well as on the upper floor you have the hardy board. Oh, sorry. Just wanted to go back to this exhibit here. So this is an existing photo studio. This is their logo. This is the sign that they're proposing. So it's going to be a little pole sign, roughly 5 feet in height, with this sign here located out front. Exact location, we're working on that. We did send out notices within 200 feet and 800 feet. We did receive one response in favor. They lived on McNear here. We did receive one other response with concerns about parking and screening, and that was on Mobley Way. With regard to the parking, like I said, we believe there's adequate parking. The original concept plan showed actually that the parking would be at the rear of the site, so it would be closer to the existing neighbors. With this layout, the parking is on street with additional driveway parking on McNear. We did talk to city engineering staff with regard to parking along McNair Drive. We looked at what was done for neighboring street on Heath, where parking is not allowed within a certain area of Coppell Road, especially with a divided little intersection here. In terms of screening, because the rear of the home, the rear of the property will be pretty much residential, staff has no problem with the proposed wood fence. Again, in this area here, it'll match what's existing, and if there has to be some kind of access or maintenance to get to the adjacent property, I think a wood fence would make more sense versus some type of masonry screening wall. Staff is recommending approval of PD 197R4-H, Old Coppell Townhomes, Lot 1, Block B, subject to the following conditions: that there may be additional comments during site plan review, that a replat will be required to grant easements and right-of-way dedications, that all proposed signage shall comply as shown, and any new signage shall comply with ordinance requirements, to allow an 8-foot wood fence in lieu of a 6-foot fence. And one other thing would be to have wood garage doors be provided in lieu of metal doors. With that last one, they are providing wood doors for the actual, front doors and side doors. With the garage facing McNair, it would be nice that it matched and be wood as well. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mary. So there on the last one, is that because all the other residents along McNair, they have wood doors, or?
I'm not sure if they have wood doors. What the applicant is proposing is to have it like a wood grain look to it. So the last one is not a hard and fast. Is more aesthetic than.
But it looks like wood.
Correct.
And if the neighbors have garage doors that are metal that look like wood.
It was just I'm not sure if they have wood or metal.
Okay.
If I interject, they're all wood on McNair.
Oh, okay.
They're all wood on McNair?
Right.
Okay.
I presume Mr. Elliott? Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mary. Any other questions of staff by the commission? Freddie?
Just had one quick question. I guess in regards to window signs, again, live work type places. I guess in regards to this, is there there any stipulations like, these LED or neon open and closed signs? Does that apply to them, or?
Yes, so any sign other than what they're showing would have to comply with our sign regulations.
Anybody else? Ed?
So in regards to the parking, do we feel comfortable that it's going to be adequate for this particular use and potentially other uses?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is the applicant here to present the case?
The applicant is here.
If I could get your name and address for the record. And
Sean Pipcorn, 12428 Lonesome Pine Place, Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the board. I don't really have a presentation, but I'm open to any questions the board may have for me at this time.
Are you in agreement with the staff conditions as presented?
Yes.
Okay. Including item 5?
Yes. I believe all the doors, I don't know if all the garage doors on McNear and the road behind it are wood or not wood, but I know they don't all have the wood look. Some are just painted regular colors or something like that. But what we're trying to do with our work live is kind of incorporate the historical elements of kind of Old Town Coppell, and then kind of try to match the townhomes behind us to kind of integrate kind of a transition from one to the other. So that's kind of how we picked our look.
It's a great look. It really is a good look. Any questions of the applicant? Okay. Wow, letting you off easy. Okay, thank you very much. This is a public hearing. We do have one person signed up to speak, but it's open to the floor. Mr. Elliott, would you like to speak?
My name is Michael Elliott. I live at 542 Mobley Way Court in the old Coppell Townhomes. And as you know, we have 21 townhomes in our HOA. And out front, we have the 2 lots that are in question, item items number 7 and 8. And looking at Mr. Pipcorn's proposal, looks good. One thing I would mention on this one, I have more comments on item number 8 when we get to that, but the fence that you discussed back behind, because, that lot backs right up to that window of that house back there. It's always been like that. And the buyer just recently bought that, knows that. But you say there's going to be like a 5-foot walkway through there?
Get into it.
Yeah, so those people that live in that in-house in the HOA will need access to get into that backyard if there's an emergency. And also that in-house of the HOA, the 3 or 4 other houses that are attached to it, if there was a fire in between any of those houses, they've got to get out through each of those backyards, either on this end or on the far end. So there needs to be an emergency, way to get out of there. So that was concerned. The garage on the side, I think, is fine. And you mentioned also we do have that very large entryway sign that we have an entrance in and exit out. So turning in there and getting into the garage, I don't think there'll be a problem backing out. And I'm glad you mentioned about no parking. We'd like to see no parking on McNear as it was in the Heath deal here a couple of years ago. If someone's parked on McNear and the emergency vehicle fire truck came down through there between the sign and all, and those houses are so close together in a driveway and not much space, the parking's a real problem. And our common area parking we have for the HOA, we only have like 8 stalls on our end down there. And you said they were going to be a sidewalk out front?
Yes, sir.
A sidewalk on South Coppell?
Right, so the sidewalk would come over here, come up this way, back down, and cross the street.
Yeah, because we just recently finished South Coppell Road here a couple of years ago and got a sidewalk there. We don't have to jump in the ditch to go to Old Town. So we want to continue to see that. That's all I have on this one. Question number 8. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So either I'm getting tired or something, but I kind of got lost on the comment about the fire access. And
I think he was talking about they're attached.
Oh.
This commercial building behind all
He wants to make sure.
That's the way the emergency crew would have to get in also. They're going to have to go into those backyards.
So the houses here.
If I can clarify, the fence in black
Mhm.
is how they designed it, and we're going to ask them to bring it 5 foot in, be a straight shot, and cut over past the house.
No.
Just an easement. The fence
Correct.
stays there, but it's just
So-
an easement.
Right. So the fence currently goes to the edge of the house right here. And right now, this is all a big open field. So we're asking for a 5-foot easement here so that they can, because there's going to be a gate over here, so that if they need to come in this way, but there's I think their patio and side entrance here. So there's going to be, we can probably tweak this a little bit, but they should have enough access like back here and over here to go.
Yeah, if the fence can be dodged to
Like maybe push it
maintain
down a little bit.
pathway around the house.
Like a straight shot like this. See, because they have, I think, some shrubs or something up here.
So
will it be good enough to ask staff to work with them?
Yeah, I think so. I would like to ask the applicant, I mean, what are your thoughts? If you could come down, Mr. Peepcorn. Are you okay with extending that easement a little bit further? It seems kind of onerous on your.
Yeah, we're trying to do as little as possible to lose property and still have to pay taxes on it. So we're okay with the easement in the fence as it is now. We don't want to have to. I mean, we understand that in an emergency, a person would have to get out of their house, but we don't want to offset our fence 5 foot off the property line. It kind of damages the value of the property at that point. But if I know right now, the existing fence kind of in the bottom right corner there is a gate that the homeowner has installed there. We've talked about possibly just leaving that there in the event. I mean, hoping they just don't trespass when they feel like it, but in an emergency, it's something that is obviously okay with us. But
I kind of feel it's onerous on y'all, but that's just me. And if there's an issue with fire, it seems to me that folks can get out the front door, just go straight out the front door, as opposed to going around the back, coming around to an easement and a gate. But
This is more for if you can't, if they're in this room.
well,
and
for that particular property, for the other townhomes, you go out a window, you go find a way out, you just
Out the
get
backyard.
out.
Yeah, understand.
Mary, did I understand you to say that you consider that 5-foot easement as drawn adequate to handle an emergency from the window or from the rear of those 4 townhouses?
I was just considering this property here, and for the window
Okay.
is what we were looking at. Typically, when you have something where it's adjacent to the property line, there's typically, some kind of easement so that they can maintain their property and for emergency purposes.
And you think the 5-foot works?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
As drawn, not going all the way to the back of the property.
The idea behind it was that, right here, that this is the part that actually touches the property line, and then it eases back. So there's 5 feet. We could maybe square this out more. But essentially, once they get to back here, that they can get through this side.
But it's only for that particular townhome that's
Correct.
adjacent.
Mhm.
So if you're next to it, you can't come out of the back and walk around the building.
I'm not sure what the easements are for those properties at the rear. I'm not sure if they have like some kind of access easement in the back. We can take a look at that.
So the fence,
yeah, go ahead.
if I could, the fence as designed follows the curve of the adjacent house, correct?
Right.
And the jog at the bottom and where the easement stops still allows a 5-foot gap between the house.
We may have to, I just kind of drew it in, but we can,
We
kind of adjust this piece.
Just as it stops to the south, and they can get between the house and the fence, could we stop it on the north, allowing them to get to their front porch? Not taking it all the way to the street.
Like maybe to here?
Because if we grant the easement and they want to get back there, they may say, hey, we have access, we're going to tear down your fence. I mean, they might have to put it back up, but still, I just wonder if we can, just as we've squared it off to the south, if we could square it off to the north.
Maybe like this.
I don't necessarily see the benefit of taking it to the street unless they plan on being able to remove those fence panels.
That's a good point.
And bring something in that way. If we just make sure that fence stays 5 foot away, the curb might be more of an architectural feature. We'll leave that to them.
Yeah, I think Marcy's pulled up a picture because I think this section over here, there's like it's a covered porch, I believe.
Yeah,
with like a low porch rail.
No.
It's like a porch rail.
Front porch, so they could get around the bay window and go to the front porch.
All right, so we could just, I think we're all in agreement here. I think the applicant and the city work together on getting this issue resolved. My position, I just kind of feel it's onerous asking this applicant to provide this easement to fix an issue with the adjacent property, and then further for 2 doors down. I just think it's a little overkill, but I'm in agreement with the overall application as it is.
I would just...
I'm sorry. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay. Thank you.
I'll ask one. I'll pose it as a question instead of a statement. I presume you want a fence.
Yes.
From the standpoint of privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And this seems to be a good way to accommodate the fence and still allow them access to the house. So I would be in agreement with cutting it from the street to allowing at least a 5-foot pathway between the corner of the bay window and the front porch. Like, take the cursor down.
Right there.
Right to about there. Just do the easement from there to the south, and that allows the applicant to install a fence and still provide the neighbor access to put a ladder up and fix something if they need to.
So the applicant and staff can work on those details. Okay. All right. Thank you. So I had not closed the public hearing. Yes, ma'am. If you'd like to add something to it. This is your house we're talking about.
I'm Debbie Elliott. I also live at 542 Mobley Way, a few doors down from this structure. I agree, it's a lovely structure. First time I'm seeing it, I'm impressed. One thing, the theme of the night seems to be sidewalks, and I'm going to continue that theme. And I love seeing the sidewalks cut around the parking stalls on South Coppell. Old Coppell townhomes waited a long, long time for sidewalks to Old Town. I mean, we had to beg and plead, and finally we got them, except that little place on McNear, next where their driveway is going to be. The city never put that sidewalk along that side that would lead up to the corner.
That all happens with development, so it'll happen
So
with
that,
this development.
when we walk, we always have to go out in the street. We go to where, the house is that it's going to abut this structure. Then we have to go out in the street and walk to the corner to get to the sidewalk. And, with all the activity down in Old Town, it's great to walk down there on a Friday, Saturday night. We see families on Saturday morning going to the farmer's market, down the sidewalk. Some are even cutting through Hunterwood Park, coming through our neighborhood because of the sidewalk access now. And it's great, but that one little strip still does not have a sidewalk.
I think it's on there.
On McNear?
Yes.
So all sidewalks are built when the project is developed.
So is it on the picture there?
Right.
That white piece.
Right. So it's going to go like this.
No,
like
I'm
this.
talking McNear.
Right.
I know, and then come around this way.
So
and
that
connect.
is a sidewalk there. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The other question I had real quick is, if I understood correctly, the first floor did have some living space in it. Is that correct?
Correct.
So is there anything that prevents the owner to rent out the first floor living space?
Good question.
Well, the way it's designed so that, they have a bedroom and a kitchen area and laundry facility and then additional bedrooms upstairs. So it's not, it's not a separate unit.
Well, my understanding with live work was the living part was upstairs and the work part was downstairs. But this combines the downstairs to a living space too?
The master is downstairs.
And
so the large closet and large bathroom, tub, shower.
Okay.
And then the upstairs bedrooms are smaller and more of a guest or could be kids.
Okay. So it could be rented out if the owner wanted to, the first floor living space?
No, because there's
no kitchen or anything on the second floor.
They're just bedrooms upstairs.
Just bedrooms upstairs. So, I mean, it's like any other typical two-story house.
I think our fear is apartment style because we've seen developers trying to slip that in the past.
Well, this isn't designed to accommodate that because you don't have any kitchen facilities upstairs. So you couldn't rent those out as apartments, and downstairs, they're interdependent, to put it that way.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion by the commission. Is there a motion by the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve case number PD 197R4-H, Old Coppell Townhomes, Lot 1, Block B, as submitted, subject to the staff conditions.
All second?
Second.
So no consideration. Well, it's been seconded. So you just feel like you don't want to address that. Okay, leave it as is. Okay. So there was a motion by Commissioner Portman, a second by Commissioner Blankenship. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Right. Robinson, Maurer, Portman, Guerra, Blankenship in favor. Opposed? Haas?
I'm only opposing because of that easement and the way it's situated. I believe this is a valuable addition to our community. This is what it's all about, the live work. I think this is incredible. It's just this easement and the access on that adjacent property. That's the only reason. Otherwise, I'd be voting for it. But so, anyway, vote's done.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Welcome to Coppell. Thank you very much. Thank you for the input. Okay, item 8 this evening is a public hearing. This is to consider approval of PD-197R5-H, Live Work Lot 1, Block A, Old Coppell Townhomes, that being Robertson property, being a zoning change request from PD-197R-H. Plan Development 197 Revised -H to 197 Revision Number 5 Historic to attach a detailed site plan for two-story, 3,000 square foot live work buildings on 0.27 acres of property located at the northeast corner of South Coppell Road and McNear Drive at the request of R.L. Robertson, being represented by Greg Franca of GPF Architects. Staff report by Mary Perrin-Boswell. Mary?
Commissioners, this is the second half or complementary piece to the last case. So this is actually at the northeast corner of South Coppell Road and McNear Drive. This also was originally approved for future commercial use. The proposal for this site is to actually replat it into 2 lots. for 2 individual live-work units. This one's a little bit different in terms of these will be have a spec interior with a final layout to be determined by when they have a purchaser. Property. So what we're looking at is the site layout as well as the elevations for the property. So as I was saying, this would require that the property be replatted into 2 lots. Similar to the last case, there would have to be a sidewalk and parking easement. This would also allow for 4 parking spaces out front on Coppell Road and more at the rear of the site. Both units would have a 3-car garage, so there would be 3 behind each garage. Again, this property is less than 2 acres, so they do meet the 30% of the site being landscaped with sod trees and shrubs, as illustrated. On the proposal, they did show 2 additional parking spots, one over here and one over here. Staff is of the opinion that these aren't really functional in terms of backing out or trying to turn into them. We would rather see that these 2 spaces be converted to additional landscaping on site. We would also request that they provide a little bit more detail in terms of the landscaping in the front islands. We just need to work on some clarification on what's going to go in there. As with the last proposal, they're proposing to provide an 8-foot wood fence. As you can see, it goes from the edge of the building here along the north property line down this way here. As with the last project that we looked at, this one basically has the entire side of the house on the property line. So as with the last proposal, we are requesting that a 5-foot access and maintenance easement be provided adjacent to the neighboring building. They're looking to make this entire area of decomposed granite, and we are requesting that only that little piece in purple where it's actually adjacent to the building behind the fence be the granite, and that they convert the rest of it to sod and other landscaping. This is basically the front here where you have a garage. So we'd like this piece to be converted back to sod. As we mentioned, the floor plans are pretty much wide open right now. Once they have an interested party, they would have to come back to building inspection with us and just kind of look at how they're designing the interior space. In terms of the exterior facade, both buildings would be mirror images of one another. So Marcy's handing out kind of the material boards. So the colors are different but complementary. Both buildings basically share the same architecture, have gabled roofs with shingle roofs. They have vertically oriented windows up front. There's a covered little porch area with wood pilasters. You have where's my mouse? There we go. Stone wainscoting area that goes along the front and both sides. Once you get to the rear of the building, you've got 3 garage doors with another side end or a back entry door. On either side, you've got a covered entryway, as well as hardy board siding for the rest. So like I said, on building 1, here's the entrance. Building 2, it's just flipped on the other side. We did send out notifications. We had the same replies as for the first application, one in favor and one with the same concerns about the parking and screening for both items. Staff is recommending approval of PD 197R5-H Old Coppell Townhomes, Lot 1, Block B, subject to the following conditions. One, that there may be additional comments during the building permit and detailed engineering review, that a replat will be required. 3, that all proposed signage shall comply with ordinance requirements. Their illustration showed some signage, but that was just for illustrative purposes. That wood garage doors be provided in lieu of metal doors. Additional landscaping for the parking island on Coppell Road. Removal of 2 rear parking spots and replace them with sod and ground cover. As well as providing sod ground cover and shrubs along the rear portion of the lot outside of the fenced area, to allow an 8-foot fence in lieu of a 6-foot fence, and to provide a 15-foot setback along McNair Drive. That last one, the house that is closest to the corner, the lot is, slanted here, so I think just the corner here is about a foot and a bit. Doesn't meet that 15-foot setback, so I think all they would have to do is just move it slightly, so they've got some room to play with over here. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mary. Questions of staff? Doug?
If think about how to phrase this. In the PD, they provided elevations. Is that written in stone? If we approve it that way, or could someone come in and change it? Could staff work with an applicant to change the appearance?
We have some latitude to do some minor revisions to it, but if it's going to look 100% different, then we would probably bring it back to y'all.
Okay. What's your thought there, Doug?
Well, the floor plan's going to have to come back anyway.
No, the floor plan, if it meets the requirements of live work in our building code, we probably won't see that again because that's internal to it.
Gotcha. Was it tied to the floor plan, or was it tied to the look and feel, or what?
No, I'm just thinking, we just got through with Block B, and so the owner that wants to buy this comes out and says, I like that look, I want to change it up. What latitude do they have? And I'm fine with that. If they want to change it, they can bring it back.
Right. I mean, again, minor modifications we'll look at, but if it's not going to look generally like that, then you'll see it.
Any other questions of staff?
I guess want some modification.
It's just 2 different property owners or potential property owners. So the first case that we looked at actually had someone who's looking to buy, and they designed that. And so this property is, the current owner is designing this property. So they had 2 different architects designing the buildings.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? I see someone signed up. Mr. Elliott. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Michael Elliott, 542 Maplewood Court. I think on the prior one, you've addressed the parking and the easement part. I mean, I wish somebody like Mr. Peppercorn would have bought that lot and just be one there as opposed to 2. Is that normal that they can squeeze 2 on that .27 of 2-story, 33 or 3,000 square foot?
I think they've met the requirements of the setbacks and density and intensity.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else like to speak on the proposed application? Oh, man. I am so sorry, Greg. Golly. The applicant. Would the applicant like to present the case?
Commissioner Greg Frank at GPF Architects, 413 West Bethel, Coppell, Texas. We met with staff, DAC, DRC process, 6-foot sidewalk along McNair so people can travel, 7-foot sidewalk along Coppell Road. We worked to get that 5-foot easement because the adjacent building to the east is right on the property line. So we gave them a 5-foot easement with the fence on the west side of the 5 feet so the person can get back there just for daily maintenance to mow the yard, everything else. So they don't, I don't know how they get back there now. I assume they come on this property. But,
There's a gate right here.
You know, we'll add the gate right there. And then, you know, if there was an emergency, they could come out through the window into that 5-foot easement and come out. And Tim Oates said he needs to be able to get in there too for fire access. So, and then, really, that's Murray did a great job. So, I'll answer any questions.
Staff comments there with the crushed with the sod and landscaping versus crushed granite.
Yes, that will do the landscaping, work with the city, whatever they want.
Any questions of the applicant? Okay. Ed?
Is there currently is there interest in the property currently?
I've got one very interested buyer, and it goes back. You know, originally somebody had planned 3 units on this property, and the city fully rejected it. And so we came to the city and said, "What does the city want to see on this property?" And that was back when Gary was the director. He said, "We want 2 buildings, not 3." So we started developing it as a 2-building concept, and then seeing how the funds work, and it's more feasible to do it this way, and it's what the city had wanted originally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I thank the public hearing noticing. I don't remember if I closed it or not, but is there anybody else who'd like to speak on the proposed application? So I'm still bothered by this 5-foot easement deal, only because I'm just like, this is a little different. In the first case, it's their backyard. This is kind of the backyard, but this is basically a driveway. I'm not as bothered with this one as I was with the first case, but how did we get ourselves into this, where we're having to allow the neighbor accessibility on the applicant's property to be able to go around? I just not liking that one bit, but that's just Eddie talking. So otherwise, I think it's fine. Of the 2 styles, you know, I think this is a good-looking application is presented. The first one, totally different flavor, you know, but you know, they're both very nice. They'll be fine additions, I think. So, any other comments by the commission? Is there a motion?
I was going to say I agree with you with the easement. I think it should be a little larger, but
I'm just bothered with it altogether. Okay. So is there any other discussion, or is there a motion?
Well, before we get to a motion, I just want to make sure that you're satisfied before. I was of the thought, and I'm sorry we didn't catch ourselves, but I was of the thought that staff could work to reduce that. That was part of the conversation or record, and that they could reduce it as much as they could to still allow access around. And this goes back to the prior B lot, or K7. And I was thinking staff was going to work with them to reduce that easement.
So
I don't know.
Are you
if
going
we
to
locked
recommend
it
that
in.
you? Are you going to recommend you reduce that? Also? I'm
going to recommend that we allow staff to do this. And if we need to reopen 7 to maybe amend that, I didn't know if we needed to, or if we approved it with it showing the 5-foot easement, if it would have to be.
No, we can work out the details between now and City Council. I think we heard the conversation, and we'll make sure that it meets both of their needs, but be as slim as possible. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Both applicants, number 7 and 8. All right. Feeling a little better. Okay. Motion by the commission.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that PD 197R5-H, Old Coppell Townhomes, Lot 1, Block A, be approved as submitted, subject to staff conditions.
We have a motion by Commissioner Portman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Robinson. And before I vote, I voted against the first one. I very much like number 7. That's a very valuable addition. I will vote for this one, but for different reasons. So, okay. So, all in favor, please raise your hands.
Robinson, Maurer, Haas, Portman, Guerra, Blankenship, in favor. None opposed. The motion carries.
So, hope I didn't offend applicant number 7, but that was just that easement deal. So, very good. Thank you, Greg, Sean. Peepcorns, welcome. Okay, item number 9 this evening is the final public hearing. This is to consider approval of PD -242R4-HC Holiday Inn Express, being a zoning change request from Plan Development number 242, revision number 2, Highway Commercial, to Plan Development number 242, revision number 4, Highway Commercial, to revise the detailed site plan to allow one 5-story hotel with a minimum of 125 guest rooms on the northern end of 2.4 acres of property located south of North Point Drive, east of State Highway 121, at the request of North Point Hotel Group, being represented by Suketu Patel, with staff report by Marcy Diamonds. Marcy?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Commission. This is our last public hearing this evening. This is the site in question. Again, it's on 121 North Point Drive. We've seen this a few times before. Just to refresh your memory, this is basically a 2-lot tract that is really close to 121 and the city of Grapevine. These plans have been set up to provide for mutual access easements from this property to eventually get to the freeway. If you remember, within last year, we did approve an A-Loft Hotel on the southernmost tract of land. It's going to have 140 rooms, 4,000 square foot of meeting space. To provide for the parking for both the rooms and the meeting space, they required to have 180 parking spaces. To accommodate that, they had to actually replat their property to allow them basically to do some of their first phase parking, which kind of infringed on their second hotel site. So what's before you this evening is a Holiday Inn Express, which is a 5-story hotel again with 125 rooms. To accommodate additional parking spaces, they actually had to purchase a little bit extra land to allow them for double row parking. They are required to have 137 spaces based on the room count in the meeting areas. They are requesting 133 spaces. However, if you add the A-Loft and the Holiday Inn parking together, you have 265 rooms and 5,200 square feet of meeting space. Altogether, you have 314 parking spaces. These developments have been set up with shared access parking, dumpster, agreement, so we're comfortable that a four space shortage is not going to be an issue at this property. So again, when the first phase was developed with the A-Loft, we did require them to build all of the fire lanes with the first phase. My understanding is that's pretty close to, if not currently under construction. With the second hotel too, as I mentioned a minute ago, that we will set up for the mutual access so you can get back to 121 eventually. So again, the hotel, they're meeting all of our hotel standards of our new ordinance. The only place they're really exceeding it is that the minimum room size is 325 versus the 285 that's required by ordinance. There's a little peek at the first floor plan where they do meet the requirements of the ordinance, where they do have right at the 1,200 square foot meeting room. Actually, they have like a boardroom and a meeting room. They do have a small breakfast area, 600 square foot fitness area, as well as an outdoor patio. This is actually the landscape plan that was approved for the A-Loft. Part of that discussion was, if you can see these trees in red, those were existing trees that they had to remove for their parking. So they offered to basically relocate those, replant those substantial trees on the common property line. The only issue is when they came in with the landscape plan on this site, they were showing the same trees. It's like, no, we need, our perimeter landscaping requires that you have basically 10 feet on both sides of the line and basically 5 feet, 5 trees on each side. So basically what they need to do is altogether have 10 trees adjacent to that common property line. They are providing, so I think it's like 43 trees on the rest of their property. Staff is suggesting, though, in front of their building, they're just basically showing ground cover. It would be really nice to have a little ornamental trees or shrubs or something to kind of dress up that front facade. These are the building elevations, and Mary will pass the color board around. Again, this is the new prototype for the Holiday Inn. It has basically 3 shades of red brick, which meets our masonry requirements. The signs do appear to meet the sign requirement, or the size requirement of our sign ordinance. This is the one that will be facing 121. They are now requesting a monument sign for both the Holiday Inn and the Aloft on their respective lots. Staff is understanding that each hotel has its own branding needs, but they're both were having some type of stone, and they were kind of similar, so we're just suggesting that they use the same stone accents on both, just to kind of be somewhat architecturally compatible, but really doesn't detract from their overall branding. And plus that when you have the 2 monument signs, which they add the stone on, it would be nice to know that these were kind of planned together. Again, the signs appear pretty close, but we just want them to provide additional details on both the attached and monument sign to make sure that they do comply with their ordinance, such as externally lit, not plastic, and all that. That being said, we sent 8 notices to property owners within 200 feet, received 1 response in favor, and additional 2 notices to properties within 800 feet, received no written response. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of PD 242R4HC Holiday Inn Express, subject to the following conditions. Our first standard condition, there'll be additional comments during detailed engineering and building permit review. That this property will be required to be replatted, because now we've added some land into this, prior to the issuance of the building permit to incorporate the additional land and reflect existing proposed access, fire lane, utility easements, and parking dumpster facilities. As we talked about, revise the landscape plan to provide the 10 overstory trees within the 20 feet on that common property line, provide additional details on attached monument sign, and there were just a few drafting issues on the site plan where we wanted them to include the proposed easements, but not really the utility lines themselves. Remove the notations by this plat on the fire lane, mutual access easement, and finally, remove the fire lane notes and the hatching which encroach into the parking spaces along the east property line. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant and his consultants are in the audience.
Very good. Thank you, Marcy. Any questions of staff by the commission? Freddie.
I just had one quick question. I guess in regards to the A-loft, what are they doing in regards to ornamental trees and shrubs along their front elevation of the building? Do you recall?
This is their landscape plan. They do have trees up in their front elevation. See right there? There's trees. So, and they don't have so you can see Holiday Inn has a nice, really long brick, flat wall there where you don't have such a straight facade on the A-loft. This is just a real long row of straightness.
Any other questions of staff? All righty. Is the applicant here to present the case?
Hi, Suki Patel, 768 Lexington Avenue, Coppell, 75019. Thank you, Commissioners and Mr. Chair and Vice Chair. We are in agreement with all the recommendation that Marcy has provided. We will have the additional 3 trees on there as well. There's going to be additional shrubs that the franchise as well require us to have. They're usually want a certain type as well, so we usually wait for them to rebuttal no matter what we do, so we know that's going to happen. Same thing with the A-loft. So we have no issues with any of the recommendation. Drafting issues we have just about complete as well. So we are fine with all the recommendations. If you guys have any questions, I would be free to answer what I can.
All righty, very good. Thank you. Any questions of the commission or by the commission? Oh, man, you sat through all this.
I know.
I'll make the comment
Marcy.
then. We've touched this many times, but I do appreciate you making the Holiday Inn Express larger. We were talking about to get the A-loft, maybe scale that down. So I think it's good that you're meeting all the requirements for the Holiday Inn Express as well.
Yes, I mean, we wanted to meet as much as of it we could. We had the additional land, and I think we're meeting just about all of the parking requirements, but a little bit. But we sacrificed a little bit of parking for more landscaping, I guess.
That's good. Thank you.
Plus, we have the shared parking agreement between both of the lots. So
yeah, very good. Any other questions of the applicant?
Church. Have you maintained communication with the church and their
they're all
access?
on board. They've signed the easement agreement, and we're already doing dirt work with them. So our supervisor and them have been communicating with them just fine. They had a sprinkler system, I guess, going through that easement road that I didn't even know about. But so we were wondering why the grass was always wet when we were going by there, and we found out they had sprinkler system there. So they were fine with capping it off since they didn't need to maintain it anymore.
Good deal. Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion by the commission? Is there a motion by the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve PD-242R4-HC Holiday Inn Express with staff conditions.
With staff, okay. Very good. We have a motion by Commissioner Robinson. Is there a second? Second, Commissioner Guerra. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Robinson, Maurer, Haas, Portman, Guerra, Blankenship in favor. None opposed. The motion carries.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry you had to wait so long. All righty. Item 10 this evening is an update on council action for planning and agenda items on July 10th, 2018. Marcy.
It was a fairly easy night that night. We just approved the ordinance for the Point West Sun Holdings and Coppell Middle School East. That zoning case went through with very little discussion. I will, as long as I have your attention, mention again that boards and commissions to reapply, they'll be available on the city's website starting this Monday through August 31st. So if you're up for reappointment, please reapply. I think the commission interviews will be, I think they're October 3rd, pretty sure. And that's all I have.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Marcy. Any other thoughts by the commission? All righty, then we will adjourn. The time is 9:27.